Chapter 6:22. Grandfather. Returning to God Emperor Mo's side, Mo Jingfang immediately held onto his arm. Imperial Father. Mo Ji followed behind him, also greeting him with an unhappy expression. What's wrong? Why are only the two of you back? God Emperor Mo looked at Mo Jingfang, thinking that something had happened, and asked with a frown. The sons of the emperors and soldiers of God Mo Kingdom also surrounded them. Because Mo Jingfang had just left, the war couldn't have ended so quickly. For Mo Jingfang to return so quickly, something must have happened. Furthermore, Mo Ji had followed her back. If nothing had happened, the two of them wouldn't have left the soldiers behind. Who is this kid? Suddenly, someone looked at Yi Hao behind Mo Jingfang and asked cautiously. He's an expert from Purple Heaven's divine kingdom. Men, take him down. No one knew when Mo Ji had hidden behind God Emperor Mo, and shouted at the same time. Hearing Mo Ji's words, the expressions of the experts of God Mo Kingdom changed. All of them were restless as they stared at Yi Hao with fiery eyes. Lad, are you from the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom? At this moment, Emperor God Mo's voice had turned extremely cold. God Emperor Mo's aura was also restless. It was just that it revolved around God Emperor Mo, and was not released. But even so, there were still many people who couldn't withstand God Emperor Mo's aura, and couldn't help but take a few steps back. Kid, you're finished this time. Feeling God Emperor Mo's aura, Mo Ji was secretly delighted as he looked at Yi Hao with a cold smile. As long as God Emperor Mo was enraged, it would be easy to kill Yi Hao. Then, he would have his revenge. Grandfather, he's the Yi Hao that I was talking about. It's him. He helped me find the herbs and even saved my life. Mo Jingfang quickly said. It's him. Hearing Mo Jingfang's words, God Emperor Mo immediately retracted his aura. So you're my little benefactor. Looking at God Emperor Mo's smiling face, Yi Hao said humbly, God Emperor Mo is too polite. I don't dare to accept your praise. It's just a small matter. What, God Emperor Mo? Just be like Fong Fong and call me grandfather. God Emperor Mo smiled and said to Yi Hao. Okay, Grandpa. Yi Hao also happily changed his tone. After all, God Emperor Mo's seniority was there. Furthermore, he had an unclear relationship with Mo Jingfang. It was only right for him to call Mo Jingfang Grandpa. Hearing Yi Hao's address, Mo Ji suddenly felt that things were going to be bad. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never have thought that Yi Hao was the one who saved Mo Jingfang, and even helped her obtain the herbs. One must know that this herb had saved the life of God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo was a grateful person to begin with. In this case, he reckoned that there would be no way for the war to break out. Mark was secretly anxious in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Indeed, after God Emperor Mo heard about Yi Hao's identity, he agreed to a truce. Grandpa, I have a request, but I don't know if I should say it. Yi Hao looked at God Emperor Mo and said embarrassedly. What? Just say it. As long as this old man is able to do it, this old man will definitely not reject. God Emperor Mo agreed readily. I want Grandpa to send out the troops and help me attack the Wu Ming divine nation, Yi Hao said with his eyes shining. Based on what? Mo Ji suddenly jumped out and interrupted. When Mo Ji saw the dissatisfaction on God Emperor Mo's face, he immediately explained. Emperor Father, you must not do this. It's fine if we don't attack the Purple Sky Divine Nation, but we have no enmity with the Wu Ming Divine Nation. We can't just add another enemy for no reason. Hearing Mo Ji's words, some of the generals felt that Mo Ji's words made sense, and started speaking up for him. That's right, Your Majesty. The Wu Ming Divine Nation's strength is on par with ours. Furthermore, we have no enmity with them. It's really not easy to make enemies. Your Majesty, the Wu Ming Divine Nation is not to be trifled with. You must not listen to this brat's bewitchment. All of you shut up. Is it you or me who has the final say in the Mo divine nation? God Emperor Mo suddenly roared. Seeing God Emperor Mo's stern expression, everyone immediately quietened down. Granddaughter, what do you think about this matter? God Emperor Mo looked at Mo Jingfang when everyone quietened down. After all, this wasn't a small matter. Although he had asked everyone to quiet down, what they said wasn't without reason. After all, Yi Hao had helped him find the life-saving herb, and he owed Yi Hao a debt of gratitude. However, there were many ways to repay a debt of gratitude. What Yi Hao said was a little too big. Letting the Mo divine nation and the Wu Ming divine nation go to war was equivalent to using the entire Mo divine nation as a bet to repay a debt of gratitude. If there were any mistakes, the entire Mo divine nation would be in danger. Grandfather, you should be the one to decide on this matter. If it was any other matter, Mo Jingfang would definitely help Yi Hao to put in a good word. However, she also knew that this matter involved a lot of things. Although she had some feelings for Yi Hao, she didn't have the authority to decide the fate of the Mo divine nation. Therefore, she didn't dare to make a decision on such a big matter, even though she really wanted to help Yi Hao. Kid, if you can take 3 of this old man's palms, I'll help you. God Emperor Mo looked at Yi Hao's expectant eyes and couldn't bear to reject. God Emperor Mo thought of an idea. If Yi Hao rejected, he could reject Yi Hao's request with a clear conscience. Of course, if Yi Hao could really take 3 of his palms, then he would take a gamble and attack the Wu Ming divine nation. However, this hope was very slim. Yi Hao probably couldn't even take 1 of his palms. Looking at Yi Hao's cultivation, he was only a 9th-level martial god. How could he take 1 of his palms? Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Mo Jingfang's gaze tightened. He suddenly thought of Yi Hao's strength. He wasn't sure if Yi Hao could take 3 of God Emperor Mo's palms. Mo Jingfang wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he swallowed his words. Because when he thought of his father's strength and looked at Yi Hao, he guessed that Yi Hao wouldn't be able to take 3 of his father's palms. Grandfather, this. Mo Jingfang's face changed when she heard God Emperor Mo's words. She wanted to persuade him but was interrupted by God Emperor Mo's gaze. Alright, I agree. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Yi Hao agreed readily. Not to mention others, in the entire Myriad Kingdom continent, there weren't many people who could hurt him with 3 palms. After all, his physical body was forged to the 10th level by lightning. With a 10th-tier physical body, unless the opponent was a sufficiently powerful powerhouse, no one would be able to harm him in the slightest. Good kid, you better think carefully. This old man won't show mercy. Hearing Yi Hao's agreement, God Emperor Mo revealed a satisfied look. It had been a long time since he saw a young man who could maintain such calmness in front of him. Come. Yi Hao stood on the spot and smiled. Then don't blame this old man for being impolite. God Emperor Mo looked at Yi Hao with a smile. Although God Emperor Mo wanted to use his full strength, he was afraid of hurting Yi Hao. When he attacked, he only used half of his strength. Do you guys think this kid can take 1 of His Majesty's palms? Looking at this kid's cultivation, he's only a 9th-level martial god. Even a peak martial god wouldn't be able to take 1 of His Majesty's palms. Chapter 6:23. While the crowd was discussing, God Emperor Mo's palm had already landed on Yi Hao's body. Yi Hao stood at his original spot and looked at God Emperor Mo without dodging. How is this possible? God Emperor Mo's face changed when his palm landed on Yi Hao's body. To be able to make a God Emperor's face change, one could imagine the shock in his heart. God Emperor Mo clearly knew that although he had only used half of his strength, he did not use any martial technique. Even if this palm landed on a peak martial god expert, he would not feel good. Even if he did not die, he would be injured. However, when it landed on Yi Hao's body, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no reaction at all. On Yi Hao's face, there wasn't the slightest trace of pain. Most importantly, Yi Hao's position did not change in the slightest. This also meant that his attack did not cause any damage to Yi Hao. At this moment, God Emperor Mo could not help but look at Yi Hao in a new light. It can't be right? Your Majesty's palm did not cause any damage to that kid. Not only did it not cause any damage, didn't you see that the kid's position did not change at all? This kid is definitely not a 9th-level martial god. How can a 9th-level martial god be so strong? Looking at Yi Hao's relaxed expression, everyone from God Mo Empire was stunned. Even Mo Jingfang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Kid, not bad. My half of my strength did not cause any damage to you. Next, I will use my full strength. Kid, you better be prepared. God Emperor Mo praised Yi Hao. No wonder. So your Majesty showed mercy. I was wondering why he did not cause any damage to that kid. Your Majesty is going to use his full strength now. That kid is probably done for. However, this kid is indeed powerful. He can actually withstand half of your Majesty's attack and still be unharmed. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, everyone's gaze landed on the two of them. Every single one of them wanted to know whether God Emperor Mo's full-strength attack would be able to cause any harm to Yi Hao. Or rather, whether Yi Hao would be able to withstand God Emperor Mo's attack. At this moment, Mo Jingfang was also looking at the two of them nervously. She didn't know who was stronger between her grandfather and Yi Hao. This time, Emperor God Mo let out a roar as the power of the martial Dao in his body rumbled. Emperor God Mo's eyes focused as he started to take Yi Hao seriously. God Emperor Mo burst forth with all his strength as he struck towards Yi Hao's chest. Get out of the way! Feeling the powerful energy surging out from Emperor God Mo's body, the people of the Divine Ink Nation quickly distanced themselves from Emperor God Mo's attack range. He's actually fine? After God Emperor Mo finished his attack, everyone's jaws nearly dropped to the ground. Yi Hao was still standing there with a smile on his face. He did not move an inch. There's still one more palm. Yi Hao looked at the astonished God Emperor Mo and laughed. Your Majesty, did you go easy on him again? Is this for real? With your Majesty's cultivation, you can even kill a peak martial god with ease. This brat is only a 9th-level martial god, but he's actually fine. Father, did you really go easy on him? You didn't use your full strength, right? Including the princes, everyone looked at God Emperor Mo in shock. Looking at the suspicious gazes from the crowd, God Emperor Mo felt wronged. If he didn't do it himself, he would have suspected it himself. But just now, he had used all his strength. It was definitely not fake. Grandfather, don't tell me you really want to help Yi Hao? You purposely came up with this idea to give the officials a reason to go to war, right? Mo Jingfang also had a face of suspicion. She thought that her grandfather was afraid that the officials would object, which was why he came up with this idea. She couldn't help but ask, do you think that grandfather needs a reason to send troops to fight? Grandfather doesn't need to play with empty words. Is Yi Hao really that strong? Grandfather, your full-strength palm couldn't hurt him at all? Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Mo Jingfang's eyes widened as she looked at Yi Hao in shock. Because she was very clear about God Emperor Mo's cultivation. God Emperor Mo's cultivation had surpassed the peak martial god and reached the 4th-level martial god realm. The ultimate martial god realm was the name for those who were above the peak martial god realm. In the 10,000 countries continent, there were very few ultimate martial god realm experts. Only a few experts in the 4 great divine kingdoms had reached the ultimate martial god realm. Even the 4 great divine kingdoms' ultimate martial god realm experts didn't amount to more than 20. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to cultivate to the ultimate martial god realm. That was because it didn't just require the power of the martial way, it also required the comprehension of the laws and the comprehension of the martial way. It was said that as long as one broke through to the 4th-level martial god realm, one could break through the void and ascend to the upper realm. Now that God Emperor Mo had reached the 4th level martial god realm, he only needed one step to ascend to the upper realm. Therefore, it could be said that God Emperor Mo was one of the strongest experts in the 10,000 countries continent. Even the strongest expert couldn't cause any harm to Yi Hao even if he used all of his strength. Just how strong was Yi Hao? Most importantly, how old was Yi Hao? At such a young age, he had become the strongest expert in the 10,000 countries continent. This was definitely something that couldn't be explained perfectly by Yi Hao. The younger generation will surpass us in time. God Emperor Mo looked at Yi Hao and couldn't help but swallow his saliva. It was hard for him to imagine that in the 10,000 countries continent there was someone who could receive his full-strength palm strike and still be safe and sound. Most importantly, this person was a young man who was only in his early 20s. At this moment, God Emperor Mo started to doubt his life. "Grandfather, do you still want to use the 3rd palm strike?" Mo Jingfang couldn't be bothered to be shocked as she looked at God Emperor Mo and asked, "Yi Hao, if you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. This old man from the endless divine kingdom will continue." God Emperor Mo knew that there was no need to use the 3rd palm strike, because if he were to continue, he would need to use his martial technique. Even if he injured Yi Hao, it would affect their relationship. He didn't want to offend such a young man with such potential. If he could befriend him, he would do his best to do so. Even if he used his martial technique, he might not be able to injure Yi Hao. As for his secret technique, he would never use it unless it was a life-and-death situation. Even more so, he wouldn't use it on his benefactor. "Granddaughter, you guys continue playing. Grandfather will go and deal with the endless divine kingdom first." After God Emperor Mo finished speaking, he transmitted a message to Mo Jingfang. "Granddaughter, this lad is not bad. You must catch him." "Grandfather, what are you saying?" Hearing God Emperor Mo's transmission and seeing the mischievous smile on God Emperor Mo's face, Mo Jingfang's cold face flushed red. She was extremely shy. "Wait, grandfather." Just as God Emperor Mo was about to turn and leave, Yi Hao immediately stopped him. Looking at God Emperor Mo's puzzled expression, Yi Hao immediately asked, "Grandfather, are you going to attack the troops of the Endless Divine Kingdom? You mean to attack the forces of the Endless Divine Kingdom's territory?" Hearing Yi Hao's question, God Emperor Mo immediately understood and asked, "That's right. As long as grandfather attacks the Endless Divine Kingdom's territory, the troops of the Endless Divine Kingdom will definitely panic. By then, they will definitely send reinforcements." Chapter 624. After completing the plan with God Emperor Mo, Yi Hao led his troops and rushed towards Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor. "Go and tell Royal Ant that if we can defend, we will defend. If we can't, we will retreat. Within 3 days, Wu Ming God Nation will retreat." Yi Hao ordered a subordinate. Yes. Although the subordinate did not believe it, he still obeyed. "Yi Hao, why are you here?" Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was also exhausted. He was surprised to see Yi Hao. "Kid, you didn't run away, did you?" Hearing that Yi Hao had returned with the 72 armies, the Purple Sky Supreme God Nation's old ancestors also rushed over. When they saw that Yi Hao had really returned, the 3rd old ancestor quickly questioned him. Hearing the 3rd old ancestor's question, Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor looked at Yi Hao with concern. This was no small matter. If Yi Hao fled without a fight as soon as the battle began, then the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom would really be powerless to reverse the situation. "I am the little princess of God Mo Nation. My grandfather has already reached an agreement with Yi Hao and is now on the way to attack Wu Ming God Nation." Just as everyone was questioning Yi Hao, Mo Jingfang suddenly stood out and said. Everyone was stunned. Looking at the identity token in Mo Jingfang's hand, they knew that Mo Jingfang's identity could not be fake. Then, everyone looked at Yi Hao in shock. "Welcome, little princess of God Mo Nation." Hearing Mo Jingfang's words, Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was delighted and immediately said to Mo Jingfang in a friendly manner, "Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor is too courteous. I hope that we will have a pleasant cooperation this time." Mo Jingfang smiled and said to Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor, "You said that God Mo Nation is attacking Wu Ming God Nation now?" The third old ancestor was still in disbelief. How did he do it? The third old ancestor was shocked. He realized that he could not see through Yi Hao. The three god dynasties had clearly reached an agreement to encircle and annihilate Purple Sky Supreme God Nation. How could Yi Hao make God Mo Nation change sides so easily? Furthermore, he could even get the Inking Kingdom to help the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom fight against the Void Divine Kingdom. That's right. My grandfather is probably already on his way to the indescribable Divine Nation. Mo Jingfang looked at the third old ancestor and said in a cold tone, "What? You don't believe me?" The reason for that was because she discovered that the third old ancestor's attitude toward Yi Hao was not very friendly. Thus, she was unwilling to be friendly toward the third old ancestor. Hearing Mo Jingfang's tone, the third old ancestor felt a little awkward. Although he was unhappy, the Divine Ink Kingdom was helping the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom. He could only smile and say, "Little Princess Mo is joking." "Yi Hao, what's going on between you and this little girl?" Just as Yi Hao was in a daze, the jealous voice of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom suddenly rang out in his mind. A friend. Yi Hao thought for a moment and realized that although he had slept with Mo Jingfang before, the two of them had not confirmed their relationship. Oh, is that so? The Purple Sky Divine Emperor had unknowingly walked to Yi Hao's side and pinched Yi Hao's waist with her jade-like fingers. SSS. Yi Hao immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Seeing that Yi Hao had caused too much of a commotion, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor withdrew her hand and asked with concern, "Yi Hao, are you all right?" Mo Jingfang also looked at Yi Hao with concern. "What's wrong? Yi Hao?" I'm fine. Yi Hao hurriedly waved his hand. "Reporting to your majesty, the Zhentian Divine Kingdom is calling for war again." At this moment, the sound of war drums came from outside and a martial sage immediately came to report. Good timing. Hearing the war drums, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's fighting spirit surged. Although he had brought a lot of troops with him previously, a total of 140 troops. This was because the direction he was heading was the important entrance to the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. If it was breached, the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's entrance would be opened for the Zhentian Divine Kingdom. Therefore, he had brought 40% of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's experts to guard the entrance. However, after 2 rounds of fighting, they had lost both rounds. The Zhentian Divine Kingdom had sent 60% of their experts to attack the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. It was obvious that they had gone all out to take down the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. The Purple Sky Divine Kingdom is full of trash. Does no one dare to come out and fight? At this moment, in front of the Zhentian Divine Kingdom's army on the battlefield, a general in golden armor stood in the void and looked at the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom's camp provocatively. "Damn it, this person is so powerful. He has already killed 3 of our Legion commanders. This person's cultivation must be at the ultimate martial god realm. Otherwise, how could he be so powerful? Do we really need the ancestor to deal with him?" Yi Hao heard the discussion of the soldiers behind him and looked at the Purple Sky Divine Emperor in confusion. "Why don't you arrange for the experts to kill this person?" Yi Hao looked at the general in golden armor and saw that he was only at the rank 1 ultimate martial god realm. Any ancestor could kill him. We have the ancestor, but so do the other side. If our ancestor attacks now, it means that we are inferior to them and their morale will drop. Moreover, the other side's ancestor will also attack. The purple sky divine emperor sighed and said with a worried look, "Your Majesty, let me fight. I will crush that boy's head." At this moment, Ziba stepped forward and said, "All right." The purple sky divine emperor agreed immediately. "Boy, I will crush your head and see if you still dare to be arrogant." Ziba shouted angrily and rushed toward the general in golden armor like a wild bull. Ziba held a giant axe in one hand and a giant hammer in the other. Good timing. When the general in golden armor saw Ziba's weapons with strong martial arts power, he was not afraid. Instead, he was delighted. With his rank 1 ultimate martial god realm cultivation, anyone below the ultimate martial god realm would not be a match for him, no matter how powerful they were. In an instant, the two of them fought fiercely. "Humph, you are just SOSO. When Ziba saw that he was not at a disadvantage, he could not help but feel proud. "Is that so?" The general in golden armor sneered. "Be careful." Yihao looked at the two of them fighting and immediately warned them. Looking at the general in golden armor's attack, it was obvious that he was holding back his strength. On the other hand, Ziba was using all his strength. As expected, just as Yihao finished speaking, the general in golden armor suddenly used a martial arts technique, 9 piercings heaven and earth. Immediately, the martial arts power around the general in golden armor surged and 9 giant sword blades shot out from his sword and surrounded Ziba. Ziba's face changed. He had not expected the general in golden armor to have time to use a martial arts technique. If he used the Titan attack, it would be too late. If he used the Titan attack, he would expose himself and suffer more damage. He might be smashed into meat paste before he could complete his transformation. "I can only take it head-on." Ziba made up his mind and waved his weapon, spinning heaven and earth. Ziba's weapon was like a propeller. It drove the martial arts power and spun in front of him, forming a giant shield. He could only go all out. If he could block the general in golden armor's giant sword blade once, he would block it with all his strength. "Looks like I have to take action." Yihao looked at the two of them fighting inside. No matter what, he had spent a lot of time with Ziba. Chapter 625. "Humph, this big guy is not bad, but he is still no match for my son." Sky-Shaking Emperor God was watching the fierce battle in the sky from the army of Sky-Shaking Divine Nation. The one fighting with Ziba was his 7th son, one of the few God-favored sons of Sky-Shaking Divine Nation. He had been cultivating hard and had never made a name for himself. This time, he had brought his 7th son to make a name for himself. That's right. The 7th son is young, but he is already a rank 1 ultimate martial god. Who else in the myriad kingdom continent can be his match? The 7th son is brave and powerful. Unless the ancestor of Sky-Shaking Divine Nation appears, no one else can be his match. Shao-Chi is not bad. Your Majesty, you have a good son. Not only the generals, but even the ancestor of Sky-Shaking Divine Nation looked at the 7th son with satisfaction. I reckon that big guy can only withstand 3 attacks from the 7th deity before he dies. The generals of the Gentian Divine Nation analyzed as they looked at the two of them. No, the big guy can withstand at least 4 attacks. An ancestor said, "Go." The 7th son wielded the giant sword and slashed at Ziba. Uproar! 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 After 3 consecutive attacks from the giant sword, it was obvious that Ziba's defensive martial arts power was running out. Due to the severe depletion of his martial arts power, Ziba's face was no longer as red as before. "Oh no, I can only block it once at most." Ziba's face revealed a bitter smile. "Come on, I will fight you to the death." Ziba withdrew his defense and transferred all his martial arts power to his weapon. He wanted to fight to the death with the 7th son. "Humph, you are digging your own grave." Seeing Ziba's actions, the 7th son sneered and controlled the giant sword. He guessed that Ziba could only withstand 1 more attack. The fifth attack would definitely turn Ziba into a pile of meat. Die. The seventh deity commanded 2 bombardments to attack Ziba. It's over. Ziba can't hold on any longer. Even the commander of the Ziba Legion can't defeat him. Who else can? Is there really no one in the younger generation of the Purple Divine Nation? At this moment, all the soldiers of the Purple Divine Nation were anxiously watching the fight between the two. The seventh God's child will win. The seventh Son of God would definitely win. The seventh Son of God will win. On the other hand, the morale of the heaven-shaking Divine Nation's soldiers soared as they cheered excitedly. Who is that person? Just as the Celestial Emperor's fourth attack was about to land on Ziba, someone suddenly cried out in alarm. Earth-devouring palm. Yi Hao stood in front of Ziba and used the Earth-rank martial skill, Earth-devouring palm. Although the Earth-devouring palm was only an Earth-tier martial skill, it could not withstand the power of Yi Hao's martial Dao. In an instant, a black vortex that was several hundred feet wide appeared in front of Yi Hao. Destroy! Yi Hao pointed his finger, and the black vortex attacked the seventh Shensi. The seventh God's son's expression changed again and again. He didn't expect such an expert to appear out of nowhere. Ha! The seventh deity didn't want to be outdone. He used the remaining 6 giant swords to attack the black vortex. But in the next second, he was stunned because his giant sword was instantly shattered the moment it came into contact with the black vortex. Then, it disappeared without a trace. Ah! Just as the seventh deity was in a daze, the black vortex had already wrapped him up and twisted him into nothingness. The seventh deity let out a scream and disappeared from this world. The black vortex also disappeared at the same time. Thank you. Ziba looked at Yi Hao and thanked him sincerely. At this moment, he finally knew the difference between him and Yi Hao. It was a world of difference. He was no match for the seventh deity at all, but Yi Hao killed the seventh deity in an instant with one attack. At this moment, it was as if time had stopped on the battlefield. There was no sound at all. Everyone looked at Yi Hao in confusion. Some people even opened their mouths wide and looked at Yi Hao in shock. What happened? Who is this young man? How can this person be so powerful? He killed the seventh deity in an instant with one move. Is he from the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom? Why have I never heard of such a powerful person in the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom? I'm not dreaming, am I? The seventh Son of God was killed in one move? At this moment, all the soldiers on both sides were shocked. Yi Hao did well. The Purple Sky Divine Emperor was also shocked and praised him without holding back. Third brother, what do you think? The second great ancestor looked at the third great ancestor and asked. The third great ancestor swallowed his saliva and said, "This kid is more powerful than I thought. I finally know why I was defeated that day." In fact, the third great ancestor's strength was similar to the seventh deity's. Seeing that the seventh deity had been killed in an instant by Yi Hao, the third great ancestor was secretly glad that Yi Hao had shown him mercy. Get ready to fight. I guess the Zhentian Divine Kingdom is going to go crazy. The first great ancestor smiled proudly. No matter what, he felt an indescribable pain in his heart after killing the seventh deity of the Zhentian Divine Kingdom. To sum it up, it felt great. After all, a genius like the seventh God's child was too terrifying. If he was allowed to grow a little more, he would definitely be a threat to them. They had not expected the Zhentian Divine Kingdom to have such profound means. They had hidden such a genius until now and were willing to reveal it. If Yi Hao had not killed him, none of the seventh deity would have been a match for him. After all, if they had attacked, the ancestors of the Zhentian Divine Kingdom would have attacked too. They would not have been able to kill the seventh deity. However, the ancestors of the Zhentian Divine Kingdom probably did not expect that there would be a young person who could surpass the seventh deity. Otherwise, they would have stopped him just now. They did not attack Yi Hao because they saw that Yi Hao was young. When they realized what had happened, it was too late. Kill this kid and avenge my son. Kill. How dare you kill the genius of the Gentian divine kingdom? Leave your life here. Tear this little bastard into pieces. At this moment, the Gentian divine emperor and the other ancestors had recovered from their shock and rushed toward Yi Hao crazily. The seventh deity was the hope of the Gentian divine kingdom. He was the hope to bring the Gentian divine kingdom to the peak. But now, he was actually killed by someone. How could they accept this? You are Yi Hao. The Gentian divine emperor had seen Yi Hao's portrait from Zhen Wei and finally recognized him. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Yi Hao should be dead. The Gentian divine emperor shook his head because he had seen Yi Hao break into the 100 Miles Lightning Dominion. Since he had broken into the 100 Miles Lightning Dominion, it was impossible for him to survive. I don't care who you are. Since you killed my seventh deity, I will kill you. The Gentian divine emperor took out his divine weapon and attacked Yi Hao. The remaining 5 ancestors of the Gentian divine kingdom did not hesitate and took out their weapons to kill Yi Hao. Quick, help Yi Hao! The great ancestor of the Violet divine kingdom shouted when he saw the ancestors of the Gentian divine kingdom attacking. Chapter 6:26. Rolling Heavenly Thunder. Yi Hao suddenly shouted as he looked at the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the heaven-shaking divine nation's ancestor. Rumble! Suddenly, dark clouds gathered in the sky and thunder boomed. What's going on? This kid can control lightning? The heaven-shaking God Emperor panicked when he saw the scene in the sky. The heaven-shaking divine nation's ancestor did not dare to move forward when he saw the sudden change in the sky. This kid still has a backup plan? The great ancestor of the purple sky divine nation looked at the dark clouds in the sky with fear. Even though they had reached the ultimate martial god realm, they were still afraid of lightning. If he can't control lightning, this kid must be playing tricks. Ancestors, let's kill him quickly! The heaven-shaking God Emperor shouted immediately. Regardless of whether Yi Hao could control lightning or not, Yi Hao could not be allowed to live. He would feel very uneasy if he did not kill Yi Hao in 1 second. Kill! The heaven-shaking divine nation's ancestors did not dare to delay any longer. They were not sure if the dark clouds above their heads would send down lightning or not. All the ancestors used their strongest killing moves at once. Die! Yi Hao moved his palm and controlled the purple qilin in his body. Immediately, lightning energy surged out of his body. 6 bucket-sized lightning bolts appeared in the sky and shot toward the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the others. The heaven-shaking God Emperor and the heaven-shaking divine nation's ancestors turned pale when they saw the sudden appearance of lightning. Run! The heaven-shaking God Emperor was not in the mood to attack Yi Hao now. He could feel the aura of death from the bucket-sized lightning bolt. Therefore, he wanted to escape at all costs. Begged in a never would have thought that Yi Hao actually really grasped the power of lightning. There was nowhere for him to hide. Needless to say, he could already feel that the martial arts power in his body was running out. Trying to escape due to the lightning, a cold smile appeared on the martial arts power lightning in the air. Domain in the face of living Yi Hao shouted, and the purple qilin in his body circulated wildly. Yi Hao did not pay any attention to him. Lightning energy surged out continuously. Keeping an enemy like this alive, the entire sky was instantly filled with the power of lightning. You will regret this. As for the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the many old ancestors, they had out an unwilling cry at the last moment. Circulate their martial power to God Emperor's words. Yi Hao sneered in his heart. Yi Hao shouted, just because of this, the entire line of your heaven-shaking God nation will be destroyed. Although the thunder territory killing the last few old ancestors, the power of thunder and lightning immediately withdrew the lightning. Powerful. Yi Hao looked at the qilin in his body, an ancestor couldn't hold on any longer and was blasted into nothingness by the lightning. Its color had faded leaving behind only a miserable cry. Because the lightning energy had been depleted. As soon as the scream ended, where is His Majesty and the old ancestors? Yi Hao, I was wrong. After the lightning my heaven-shaking God nation, the people of the heaven-shaking God nation immediately looked at the sky. When they found that the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the old ancestors had disappeared, they all panicked. His Majesty and the old ancestors seem to have been killed. Who is he? How can he control lightning? Why isn't he a member of our heaven-shaking God nation? His Majesty is dead. The heaven-shaking God nation is done for. Brothers, let's surrender. At this moment, there was a commotion in the camp of the heaven-shaking God nation. Fear spread in everyone's heart. I'll give you two choices. Kneel down and submit to me, become Yanlong's men, or die. Yi Hao's eyes swept across all the soldiers of the heaven-shaking God nation as lightning flashed. What? He's the young Emperor Yanlong, the first sacred dynasty under the heaven-shaking God nation? How can the young Emperor Yanlong be so young? He's the one who made the myriad kingdom grand ceremonies list disappear? When they heard the name of the Fire Dragon Empire, the people of the heaven-shaking God nation had also heard of it. However, no one expected that the person who made the myriad kingdom grand ceremony known by the world would be so young. Now that they looked at it again, the 7 god children were like dung in front of Yi Hao. They were completely unpresentable. Moreover, Yi Hao could control lightning. Looking at the lightning in Yi Hao's hands, everyone was shocked and fearful. The lightning that Yi Hao could control could even kill the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the old ancestor. Those were ultimate martial gods, let alone them. They also knew that the heaven-shaking God Emperor of the heaven-shaking God nation was dead. The 7 god children, their hope, were also dead. Even the old ancestor was dead. They no longer had anyone to be loyal to. If they still insisted on not surrendering, they would be blindly loyal and courting death. We are willing to surrender to the young Emperor Yanlong. Suddenly, someone brought his subordinates and knelt down on the ground. Your loyalty doesn't seem to be enough. Yi Hao immediately checked the stats board and found that most of the soldiers were just saying that they were unconvinced. They were just trying to appease him. You. Yi Hao pointed at those whose loyalty points had not even reached 60. Those who were pointed at by Yi Hao started to panic and their bodies started to tremble. They could not imagine how Yi Hao could see through their inner thoughts. Ding dong, Zhang Zijiang's loyalty increased by 10. Loyalty increased by 10. Loyalty increased by 10. Ding dong, Pan Jinjuan's loyalty increased by 20. Loyalty increased by 15. Loyalty increased by. Ding dong, Ding Wei's loyalty increased by 8. As Yi Hao pointed at those whose loyalty points had not reached 60, the loyalty points of those who were pointed at skyrocketed. They were completely shocked by Yi Hao's means. Not only was he powerful, but he could also see through people's inner thoughts. The more they thought about it, the more terrified they felt. How could they not be afraid of Yi Hao? Each and every one of them could only be dead set on being loyal to Yi Hao. Otherwise, it was easy to lose their little lives. What is he doing? Can he see through people's inner thoughts? Who knows? It doesn't look like he's pretending to be mysterious. It seems that the Myriad Kingdom continent is really going to change. At this moment, the old ancestors of the heaven-shaking divine nation were also discussing. There was a trace of fear in their eyes when they looked at Yi Hao. If they were to attack together, they might be at a disadvantage against the old ancestors of the heaven-shaking divine nation. Chapter 6:27. Otherwise, they wouldn't be watching quietly as Yi Hao subdued the soldiers of the Zhentian divine nation. If these soldiers were recruited, they would definitely increase the military strength of the nation. After all, there were a total of 6,000 martial gods and 600,000 martial sages here. Logically speaking, if these people joined forces to deal with Yi Hao, they would definitely be able to kill Yi Hao. However, they had already been scared out of their wits by Yi Hao. All they wanted to do was to survive. How could they possibly think of joining forces to deal with Yi Hao? It seems like there are still some stubborn people. Do you really want me to kill them? Yi Hao swept his gaze over the crowd and discovered that 90% of them already had a loyalty rating of 80% and above. However, there were still a few people whose loyalty was still hovering around 60%. Yi Hao deliberately looked at those whose loyalty had not reached 60%. It seems like I have no choice but to make an example out of them, Yi Hao thought to himself as he looked at the few people whose loyalty was really not increasing. Destroy them. Yi Hao chose 10 people whose loyalty was not high enough and whose potential was limited. He directly released 10 bolts of lightning. The 10 people panicked and were vexed as they were struck by the lightning bolts and turned into charcoal. As for the remaining people whose loyalty was not high, they were completely flustered. They knew that Yi Hao was making an example out of them and scaring them. However, they had no choice but to accept it. This was because they were also afraid of death. They could not guarantee that Yi Hao would not make an example out of them. If he did, the people who would be killed later would not be them. All of you, get up. Yi Hao pointed at those whose loyalty had reached 80% and above. The remaining people who were kneeling on the ground were filled with fear of Yi Hao. They could not control their trembling bodies. They finally realized that they were practically invisible in front of Yi Hao. They all put away their petty thoughts and swore in their hearts that they would be loyal to Yi Hao. This was because if they were not loyal to Yi Hao, their lives would be in danger later. You can stand up. Every time someone's loyalty reached 80, Yi Hao would ask them to stand up. Those who stood up could not help but sigh in relief. Their bodies were already drenched in cold sweat. How did he do it? It seems like he can really see through people's loyalty. Could it be that he can really see through people's inner thoughts? This is simply too perverted. The patriarch of the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom was even more fearful of Yi Hao now. They were able to analyze a person's loyalty after reaching the ultimate martial god realm. However, he had to use it on people whose cultivation was lower than his. He also had to use his aura to pressure them, carefully observe the changes in their expressions and body movements, and then analyze whether the person was loyal to him. However, it wasn't a 100% success rate. Moreover, it could be used in large quantities against those with lower cultivation realms, using martial arts power to mess up their minds. However, when it came to martial sages and martial gods, the effects of pressure would be much weaker. This was because the difference in their cultivation levels was not too great, so the effects would not be as good. Moreover, when it came to martial gods and martial sages, it would only be used on a few dozen people at a time. Any more and there wouldn't be any obvious effect. Unlike Yi Hao, there were more than 600,000 people. Yi Hao only glanced at them, and without even using his aura, he could analyze which of the 600,000 people were loyal to him and which were not. If such a person was not terrifying, they could not think of anyone who could be. In the end, Yi Hao killed nearly 100 people under his strong coercion. The remaining soldiers of the Zhentian Divine Kingdom all had a loyalty level of more than 80. Yi Hao selected a group of soldiers with a loyalty level of more than 90 to serve as captains or commanders of these soldiers. The Violet Sky Divine Emperor looked at Yi Hao in a daze. The Zhentian Divine Kingdom had officially disappeared from the Myriad Kingdom continent. Yi Hao's position had directly replaced the Zhentian Divine Kingdom's position. At this moment, Yi Hao was definitely not inferior to the other 3 Divine Kingdoms. After cleaning up the Zhentian Divine Kingdom, Yi Hao smiled at the Violet Sky Divine Emperor and said, "Let's go. Let's go encircle the Zhentian Divine Kingdom." Alright. The Violet Sky Divine Emperor nodded in agreement. The 2 armies completely merged into one army. More than 10,000 martial gods and 1 million martial sages swept across the Zhentian Divine Kingdom in a mighty manner. Along the way, countless nations were scared out of their wits when they saw such a lineup. All the emperors and ministers knelt down to see them off. What's going on? I think I saw the military flag of the Fire Dragon Empire just now. It seems that the Fire Dragon Empire's military flag is more than the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom's. When did the Fire Dragon Empire become so powerful? It seems that they are attacking the Gentian Divine Kingdom. What? Didn't the Gentian Divine Kingdom's army just pass by? Isn't this the three Divine Kingdoms attacking the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom? How did it become an encirclement of the Gentian Divine Kingdom? Seeing the army passing by, the people kneeling on the ground started to discuss. They all had a feeling that the situation in the Myriad Kingdom continent was about to change drastically. At this moment, the most depressed person was the Gentian Divine Emperor. Damn it! What is this Divine Emperor Mo doing? I must skin him alive. The Gentian Divine Emperor hurried towards the Gentian Divine Kingdom. Along the way, he cursed countless times. Originally, he had led the army to attack the Imperial Ant and won 3 battles in a row. The Imperial Ant was beaten back continuously. Just when he wanted to take advantage of the momentum to attack and kill the Imperial Ant, he suddenly received news that his backyard was on fire. The Divine Ink Kingdom, which was also in the alliance, was attacking the Gentian Divine Kingdom. When he heard the news, he was dumbfounded and could not believe it. After repeated confirmation, the Divine Ink Kingdom was really attacking the Gentian Divine Kingdom. When he heard the news, he was furious. Then, he was puzzled. He did not understand why the Divine Ink Kingdom, which was in the same alliance, would suddenly attack the Gentian Divine Kingdom. Although he could not figure it out, he had to give up the perfect opportunity to attack and led the army back to the Gentian Divine Kingdom. He could not wait to rush back to the Gentian Divine Kingdom and kill Divine Emperor Mo. He wanted to let Divine Emperor Mo know that he was not to be trifled with. Your Majesty, that Divine Emperor Mo, I guess he had bad intentions from the start and did not sincerely cooperate with us. That's right, otherwise, he would not have agreed so quickly. Those despicable people from the Divine Ink Kingdom dare to sneak attack our Gentian Divine Kingdom. We must not let them off easily. Hearing the words of the generals, the Gentian Divine Emperor said angrily, "My beloved ministers, rest assured. This emperor will make Divine Emperor Mo pay a painful price for his actions." The Gentian Divine Emperor was not afraid of Divine Emperor Mo at all. In terms of strength, the Gentian Divine Kingdom was stronger than the Divine Ink Kingdom. Your Majesty, what about the Gentian Divine Kingdom? An old ancestor asked worriedly. Chapter 6:28. Your Majesty, when the time comes, we will destroy the Ink God Kingdom, and the Heaven-shaking God Kingdom will destroy the Violet God Kingdom. Then, on this Myriad Kingdom continent, won't there be only 2 God-grade factions left? 2? Emperor God Wu Ming sneered. I don't like to share things with others. Everyone's heart froze as they understood Emperor God Wu Ming's intention. We wish your Majesty the best in unifying the Myriad Kingdom continent. Ha ha! Emperor God Wu Ming laughed out loud. He was in a good mood and the anger from before had dissipated. Because he had the possibility of accomplishing a pioneering feat that no one could accomplish, and that was to unify the Myriad Kingdom continent. Emperor God Wu Ming was extremely excited at the thought that he would be the first to create history and unify the Myriad Kingdom continent. He had to thank Divine Ink Nation for their sudden betrayal. Otherwise, 3 Gods Nation would have attacked Purple Heaven Divine Nation and the final outcome would have been 3 out of 4. It was impossible for him to fight against 2 Divine Kingdoms by himself. Now, he only needed to destroy Divine Ink Nation and wait for Heaven-shaking Divine Nation to destroy Purple Heaven Divine Nation. Before Heaven-shaking Divine Nation could react, he would destroy Heaven-shaking Divine Nation. By then, the entire Myriad Kingdom continent would belong to him, Emperor God Wu Ming. He, Emperor God Wu Ming, would become the #1 emperor of all times. Father, do you trust that kid that much? Emperor God Wu Ming is already on his way back. If that kid doesn't come to save us, we'll be surrounded. At this moment, Mo's face was filled with fatigue as he looked at God Emperor Mo anxiously. Emperor God Mo's eyes were also filled with fatigue. He had thought that he would be able to destroy the abyssal divine nation in one go. But he didn't expect Wu Ming divine nation to be harder to deal with than he thought. The battle had been going on for a few days and neither side had the upper hand. Furthermore, Wu Ming divine nation didn't want to fight. They retreated without hesitation when they couldn't win. Although he had conquered a lot of Wu Ming divine nation's land. But after an intense battle, the land that he had conquered had turned into ruins. And these ruins weren't of any help to him. Imperial Father, I think we should retreat. If we retreat now, we can still escape unscathed. Emoji saw that God Emperor Mo had sunk into silence and spoke once more. After all, he was the one with the highest hopes of becoming the successor of the Ink God Kingdom. He did not wish for the divine Ink Kingdom to perish here. I believe in Yi Hao. Rest for a moment and continue attacking. God Emperor Mo recalled Yi Hao's strength and said with a resolute gaze. Imperial Father. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, Emoji cried out unwillingly. There's no need to say any more. God Emperor Mo's eyes turned cold. Emoji couldn't help but shudder and didn't dare to say anything more. Emoji stared at God Emperor Mo's back with resentment as he muttered in his heart, Father, why didn't you listen to your son's advice? Father, you are already old. Don't blame your son. Emoji's eyes were fierce, as if he had made a decision. He turned around and flew in the direction where the ancestors were resting. Emperor God Mo took a glance at Mo Xian's back view. Without thinking much, he retracted his gaze. He had some understanding of his son. Prepare to attack. God Emperor Mo squinted his eyes as he looked towards the direction of the Ink God Kingdom. To be honest, he was extremely nervous at this moment. I wonder how Yi Hao is doing, God Emperor Mo thought anxiously. He had already received news that Ink God Emperor was rushing back with his subordinate. If Yi Hao couldn't make it in time, he would be attacked from both sides. The war continued for 3 to 4 days. Both sides were still in a stalemate. Ink God Kingdom had retreated by a few more cities. Brothers, hold on a little longer. His Majesty has sent news that he will be here soon. At this moment, a general of the Ink God Kingdom shouted excitedly. Roar! 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 The soldiers of Ink God Kingdom roared excitedly when they heard the general's words. Damned Ink God Kingdom! We can finally retaliate. Wait till His Majesty returns. I will definitely kill those bastards. We have been retreating for so long. I have been holding in my anger for a long time. My hands are already itching. I hope Ink God Kingdom won't be scared till they wet their pants. Ah! At this moment, the soldiers of Ink God Kingdom were discussing excitedly. On the other hand, the atmosphere in Ink God Kingdom's camp wasn't too optimistic. I really don't know what His Majesty is thinking. Instead of attacking Purple Sky God Kingdom, he chose to attack Ink God Kingdom. I heard that Ink God Emperor is rushing back with his army. If we don't send reinforcements, we will be dead. Who said we didn't send reinforcements? That Yi Hao expert has already said that he will send reinforcements after destroying Heaven-shaking God Kingdom. Don't be too naive. Let's not talk about whether Yi Hao's words can be trusted. Heaven-shaking God Kingdom isn't that easy to destroy. That's right. Heaven-shaking God Kingdom is still a God Kingdom. How can it be destroyed in such a short period of time? No matter what, Yi Hao's expert is indeed strong. He seems to be even stronger than His Majesty. I believe in Yi Hao. The atmosphere in Ink God Kingdom's camp was a little gloomy. Many people were discussing. However, many of them were convinced by Yi Hao's strength and became Yi Hao's fanatical fans. They trusted Yi Hao unconditionally. But more than that, their faces were filled with anxiety. They didn't believe that Heaven-shaking God Kingdom was that easy to destroy. They were only thinking about what they should do when Emperor God Wu Ming rushed back and they would be attacked from both sides. Brothers, you've worked hard. At this moment, A middle-aged man in a python robe walked over with a smile. He was followed by a few old men. When the soldiers saw him, they were shocked. They immediately stood up and greeted him. Greetings to old ancestor and the second prince. That's right. The person who came was the second prince, Emoji. After he was defeated by Ink God Emperor, he rushed to the resting place of the old ancestors. Through his extravagant explanation, he managed to convince the old ancestors. Brothers, my father is already old. He was tricked by Yi Hao and wants to bury us in the hands of Ink God Kingdom. That Yi Hao is using us as a tool to delay Ink God Kingdom. In the end, he wants us to fight with Ink God Kingdom so that Yi Hao will benefit from it. As the second prince of Ink God Kingdom, I can't let this happen, Emoji said righteously. His tone was impassioned and stirred up the hearts of the soldiers. The mood of the soldiers, who were already unstable to begin with, was easily stirred up by the ink. Impossible. How could Yi Hao's expert lie to us? Moreover, His Majesty is old and vigorous. He's meticulous. How could he be tricked by Yi Hao's expert like what Your Highness said? That's right. Your Highness is trying to stir up the hearts of the soldiers. Are you trying to rebel? I wonder if His Majesty knows about Your Highness's actions. At this moment, a few people stood out and refuted Emoji's words. Chapter 629. You must be Yi Hao's spies. Die. Before Emoji could speak, an old ancestor behind him suddenly attacked. The few people who had spoken up for Yi Hao were instantly killed. Ah! Seeing this scene, all the soldiers took half a step back in fear and nervously looked at the old ancestor and Emoji. The old ancestor clapped his hands and continued to stand behind Emoji, as if he had just killed a few ants. His expression did not change at all. Seeing the old ancestor attack, Emoji's face was filled with satisfaction. He did not expect the old ancestor to support him so much. Emoji's heart was filled with pride. A traitor like this who has been groomed by the Emotion Nation dares to help an outsider. Yi Hao's dog words, do you think he should be killed? Emoji's gaze swept across the crowd. Everyone looked at Emoji's vicious gaze and did not dare to speak. Because if they were not careful, their lives could be in danger. This Lord has said what needs to be said. Those who are willing to follow this Lord, take out your weapons. Hearing Emoji's words, how could they not know that Emoji wanted to rebel? But Emoji's words were righteous, and he had the support of the old ancestor behind him. Everyone immediately fell into deep thought. We are willing to follow Your Highness and rebuild the glory of the Emotion Nation. Some of the people who had been waiting for a long time in the crowd seized the opportunity and shouted, Good, as long as you follow this Lord will not treat you unfairly. Emoji said with a smile. As Emoji's men shouted, those who originally did not have any hope for this war began to waver. All of you, don't hesitate anymore. Follow this Lord home. Emoji saw that everyone was wavering and continued to crush their hearts. Could it be that you are willing to die for Yi Hao and believe his nonsense, and bury my Emotion Nation in the sea of fire? Brothers, don't be silly. We should go back and protect our families and our nation, not wait for death here. Hearing Emoji's words, the old ancestors were satisfied. They didn't expect him to hide so deeply, to be so scheming. Moreover, he was so decisive and straightforward in his actions. To be able to persuade the soldiers to betray God Emperor Mo at this moment, one could see Mo Xian's guts and courage. How was this still the same person? The moment he saw God Emperor Mo, he was like a mouse that saw a cat. In the past, the 7 divine princes and Zhen Wei had concealed the brilliance of Ink Stain. At this moment, Ink Stain had finally exposed his ambitions. Furthermore, Ink Mark's words had also convinced them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come back to help Ink Mark. All of you, the Second Highness will be the best candidate to become the next God Emperor. All of you, follow him and become heroes of the Empire. Even if you don't trust the second prince, don't you trust us? As the Emotion Kingdom's old ancestors, how could we do anything that would harm the Emotion Kingdom? As the patriarchs of the Ink Spirit Nation, everything we do is for the benefit and safety of the Ink Spirit Nation. The other patriarchs also helped Emoji persuade the crowd. Hearing the words of Emocien and the patriarchs, most people finally chose to follow Emocien in their hearts. Alright, follow me back to the country. Whoever dares to stop us will be killed without mercy. Emoji saw that almost everyone had raised the weapons in their hands. Emoji also drew his sword and pointed it at the sky as he shouted with a bright light in his eyes. Not good, Your Majesty. The second prince has betrayed us. Just as God Emperor Mo was leading the frontline troops to wage war against the Wu Ming Divine Nation, a soldier suddenly came to report. What? That unfilial son. Hearing the soldier's words, God Emperor Mo was so angry that his face flushed red. Old ancestor, please help me capture that unfilial son. God Emperor Mo couldn't leave at this moment, so he could only order the soldier. The soldier took a glance at God Emperor Mo and revealed a difficult expression. What's wrong? Why aren't you going? God Emperor Mo turned to look at the soldier and frowned slightly. Your Majesty, old ancestors, the second prince has betrayed us. The soldier hesitated for a while before saying, PFFF. Hearing the soldier's words, God Emperor Mo couldn't hold it in anymore. His throat felt warm and his head buzzed as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Your Majesty! Your Majesty, are you all right? Your Majesty! The soldier quickly helped God Emperor Mo up. Some of the generals also rushed over and looked at God Emperor Mo worriedly. The most unacceptable thing in the world was the betrayal of one's family. Although he was in the royal family, God Emperor Mo had experienced such things many times and was already used to it. However, this was the first time that he was betrayed by his son, and it made him angry. Furthermore, what he couldn't understand the most was why those old ancestors were in cahoots with Emoji and betrayed him. God Emperor Mo calmed himself down and stood up again. How many people did that unfilial son take away? Almost all of the rear troops were taken away. A total of 3,000 martial gods and 300,000 martial saints. The soldier quickly replied. Although God Emperor Mo was prepared for it, his heart still ached when he heard the number. God Emperor Mo looked around at the soldiers who were still fighting. He couldn't help but sigh, instruct the soldiers to retreat. At this moment, even if God Emperor Mo didn't want to retreat, he had no choice. Currently, he had less than 2,000 martial gods and less than 200,000 martial saints. How were they going to fight against Wu Ming God Nation with these people? After all, although there weren't many of them at the start, they could still hold on for a while even if Wu Ming God Emperor were to return. Now that the difference in numbers was too huge, it was impossible to hold on. Otherwise, if Wu Ming God Emperor were to return, it would really be over. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, the soldiers left the battlefield and retreated. As for the people from Wu Ming God Nation, they were afraid of God Mo Nation's tricks, so they didn't chase after them. General, according to the news from our scouts, it seems like God Mo Nation is having internal strife. Their second prince has escaped with his men. What? Is the news true? When the great general of Wu Ming God Nation heard the report from his subordinate, his face was filled with shock and joy. General, it's true. The subordinate also replied with joy. I said it's fine. Why did that old man retreat so quickly this time? The great general's face revealed a look of enlightenment as he understood the situation. Reporting to the great general, His Majesty has sent news that he will be back in an incense's time. At this moment, a subordinate came to report. Good. The great general was in a good mood as he took out his sword. Pass down my orders. Leave 10% of the soldiers to guard the city. The rest of the soldiers, follow me to retrieve God Emperor Mo's head. After receiving the great general's orders, all the soldiers flew out of the city in a single file and headed towards the direction where God Emperor Mo retreated. Your Majesty, not good. The people from Wu Ming God Nation have caught up. At this moment, God Mo Nation was retreating in a hurry. Looking at the flustered look of the soldiers, God Emperor Mo frowned and shouted, "What are you panicking for? Order the soldiers to retreat at full speed." Chapter 630. However, things were always getting worse and worse. At this moment, a martial god covered in blood flew to the front of Emperor God Mo and said with difficulty, "Not good, Your Majesty. Wu Ming Divine Nation is right in front of us. They are less than an incense's time away from us." What? Emperor God Mo's face changed. Emperor God Mo looked at the people behind him and realized that everyone's eyes were filled with fear. "Forget it." God Emperor Mo sighed. "Take off your armors and run for your lives. This emperor will help you delay for as long as possible. It's all my fault for not teaching my son well and giving birth to such an evil creature. Otherwise, you wouldn't have fallen to such a state." Emperor God Mo regretted that he couldn't teach Emoji a lesson personally. If Emoji didn't bring him away, he wouldn't be in such a passive state now. In the past, his army could at least resist Emperor God Emoji for quite some time. However, it was different now. The difference in numbers was too great and they couldn't stop him. Fighting with Emperor God Emoji would be like hitting a rock with an egg. "We are willing to fight to the death with Your Majesty. We will follow Your Majesty in life and death. Your Majesty, even if we die, we will not abandon Your Majesty. Your Majesty, let's fight with them. At most, we will follow Your Majesty in our next life. We will definitely not abandon Your Majesty and live a lowly life." At this moment, the soldiers that were following God Emperor Mo were basically all loyal to God Emperor Mo. If they were blinded by fear at the beginning because of the difference in strength between both parties, they were now filled with fear. However, at this moment, they were influenced by Emperor God Mo's words and their blood was reignited. Ha ha ha, what a touching scene. Since all of you are asking for death, it's not good for me to not fulfill your wishes. Just when everyone was talking, laughter could be heard from the sky. A huge dragon carriage flew over from the sky and behind it were countless soldiers from Wu Ming Divine Nation. Emperor God Emoji laughed as he walked out of the dragon carriage and stood in the sky. He was wearing a luxurious 5-clawed dragon robe. Emperor God Emoji wore the Wu Ming crown and looked at Emperor God Mo in disdain. It was as if he was looking at a dead man. I really didn't expect that the famous divine Emperor Mo would actually have such a good son. In the end, he ended up being betrayed by everyone. What about the old ancestor of your divine Emperor Mo? Did he betray you too? Ha 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 ha. Emperor God Wu Ming's mocking words immediately caused a series of mocking laughter behind him. Hearing Emperor God Wu Ming's mocking laughter, Emperor God Mo's face turned gloomy. "Little Wu Ming, if you want to fight, let's fight. I'm not afraid of you. Don't even think about using your tongue. A bunch of stray dogs and you still have the cheek to clamor. Today I will humiliate all of you. Let's see what you can do to me," Emperor God Wu Ming said with disdain. "Your Majesty, let's fight it out with them. Wu Ming has gone too far. Your Majesty, you can't let them humiliate you anymore. Fight them. Even if I die today, I'll drag one of Fu Jiuzhong's dogs down with me." At this moment, the rage in the hearts of the soldiers of the Ink God Kingdom was completely ignited by Emperor God Wu Ming. "Ha ha ha, be angry, be angry. We like to see your angry yet helpless expressions." Looking at the enraged expression of the Ink God Nation soldiers, Emperor God Wu Ming laughed complacently. "God Emperor Mo, don't you love your soldiers? How about we play a game today?" Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Emperor God Mo. His eyes were filled with humiliation. "Your Majesty, there's no need to care about him. Let's fight it out with them. Your Majesty, Wu Ming is obviously trying to humiliate you. You mustn't agree to it. We are not afraid of death. That's right. Let's fight it out with them. The soldiers of the Ink God Nation could see the humiliation in Emperor God Wu Ming's eyes. They were all agitated. Hearing the words of the soldiers, Emperor God Mo made up his mind. He looked at Emperor God Wu Ming and said, "All right, we'll agree to it. What game is it? Men, bring out the good stuff that we've prepared for Emperor God Mo." Emperor God Wu Ming laughed. Just as he finished his words, a dozen men walked out. Each of them was carrying a wooden bucket. Emperor God Mo frowned. He had already guessed what it was. "Open it and let Emperor God Mo take a look," Emperor God Wu Ming ordered arrogantly. At the same time, he subconsciously covered his nose. Outrageous! It's actually excrement. Seeing the men of Wu Ming God Nation opening the wooden bucket, the soldiers of the Ink God Nation were infuriated. "Come on, Emperor God Mo. If you eat a mouthful, I'll let one of your men go. If you eat a bucket, I'll put 200 martial gods and 20,000 martial saints. If you eat all of them, I'll let all of your men go." Emperor God Wu Ming pointed at the feces bucket and said humiliatingly, "Wu Ming, you bastard. If you have the ability, do it. Don't you dare humiliate our emperor. Whoever is afraid of death is a coward. Brothers, let's fight it out with them." Fight it out with them. At this moment, the soldiers of the Ink God Nation could no longer tolerate it. They were all prepared to fight to the death. "Emperor God Mo, you have to understand the situation clearly. Are you willing to let your loyal subordinates die? Sacrificing one of your men in exchange for all of their lives. This trade is worth it, right?" Emperor God Wu Ming ignored the furious soldiers of the Ink God Nation. He continued to talk to the cold Emperor God Mo. "Are you serious?" Emperor God Mo gritted his teeth in hatred towards Emperor God Wu Ming. But he had no choice. At this point, he was indeed unwilling to let his loyal subordinates die for him, because there was no value in dying like that. If he could exchange everyone's lives with his humiliation, he was willing to be humiliated. "Your Majesty, you can't." Hearing Emperor God Mo's words, the soldiers of the Ink God Nation were moved to tears. "Emperor God Wu Ming, if you want to humiliate us. Let our emperor go." A great general stood out and pointed at Emperor God Wu Ming's nose. "Bah! Who do you think you are?" Emperor God Wu Ming looked at the great general of the Ink God Nation in disdain. "You!" The great general was furious. If Emperor God Mo didn't allow him to take action, he would definitely fight it out with Emperor God Wu Ming. "Mo Hu, back down!" Emperor God Mo shouted. "Your Majesty!" The great general was unwilling to back down. He retreated to the back of Emperor God Mo and stared at Emperor God Wu Ming fiercely. "Emperor God Mo is sensible. Eat, I will definitely keep my words." Haha, the dignified Emperor God Mo eating. If this were to spread out, it would definitely be interesting. At this moment, Emperor God Wu Ming didn't give any face to Emperor God Mo as he laughed arrogantly. Who asked Emperor God Mo to become a toy in his hands? Emperor God Mo's life and death were in his hands. Furthermore, he even grabbed hold of Emperor God Mo's weakness. Hence, he knew that he could humiliate Emperor God Mo however he wanted. As for releasing the soldiers of the Ink God Nation, it was simply a pipe dream. He was just trying to fool Emperor God Mo. He wanted to turn all the soldiers of the Ink God Nation into his slaves. They would never be able to raise their heads again. When he thought about how Emperor God Mo, who was on the same level as him in the past, was about to eat shit in front of him. Chapter 631. Emperor God Mo, are you going to eat it? Emperor God Wu Ming raised his arm, and all his subordinates immediately raised their weapons and prepared to attack. The threat was obvious. Everyone from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom looked at Emperor God Mo proudly. Although Emperor God Mo was furious, He seemed to have made a decision and walked towards the wooden bucket. Looking at Emperor God Mo's action, Emperor God Wu Ming's smile became wider. Let me see who dares to touch Emperor God Mo. At this moment, an arrogant voice was heard. Who dares to be so arrogant? The soldiers of Wu Ming Divine Kingdom opened up a path. There was a young man in an emperor robe with two ladies standing beside him. They looked exceptionally beautiful. One of the ladies was also wearing an emperor robe, while the other was wearing an armor. Who are they? They are so beautiful. That brat is really lucky. He actually got two beauties like this. However, I don't think they will have a good ending for disturbing His Majesty's interest. Everyone from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom started to discuss as they looked at Yi Hao and the other two curiously. Grandfather. Mo Jingfang saw her grandfather and her eyes turned red as she ran towards him. So it's Emperor God Mo's granddaughter. Men, catch her. Looking at Mo Jingfang, who was running towards Emperor God Mo, Emperor God Wu Ming waved his hand and ordered his subordinate. Hearing Emperor God Wu Ming's order, a few martial gods rushed out and tried to catch Mo Jingfang. Courting death. Looking at the few martial gods who tried to catch Mo Jingfang, Yi Hao circulated the lightning energy in his body and released a few bolts of lightning. The few of them did not even have the chance to react before they were turned into nothingness. Oh my God, what was that? Was that lightning? How is that possible? Who is that young man? How could he control lightning? My senses are definitely right. That was definitely lightning. Seeing the martial gods being blasted into pieces, the crowd shifted their gazes toward Yi Hao in astonishment. Emperor God Wu Ming's face changed. Who are you? How dare you disturb His Majesty's interest? Get lost if you don't want to die. Although Emperor God Wu Ming saw Yi Hao using lightning, he only thought that Yi Hao used some kind of martial skill to play a trick. This was because he had never heard of anyone in the Myriad Kingdom continent who could use lightning. Moreover, it was such a young person. Your Majesty, look at that woman. Doesn't she look like Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's wife? Just as Emperor God Wu Ming was glaring at Yi Hao, an old ancestor walked to the front of Emperor God Wu Ming and spoke softly. What? Profound Abyss God Emperor was stunned at first. Then, he looked at Purple Heaven God Emperor with a shocked expression. It really is her. What is she doing here instead of fighting Heaven-shaking God Emperor in Purple Heaven Divine Nation? Your Majesty, could it be that the Heaven-shaking Divine Nation has been destroyed? The ancestor suddenly had a bold guess. Emperor God Wu Ming immediately denied. He then looked around and saw that there were only Yi Hao and the other two. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, Didn't you see that there are only 3 of them? Walala. Just then, there was a sound that alerted Emperor God Wu Ming. But when he saw who it was, Emperor God Wu Ming laughed. Greetings, Your Majesty. Welcome back to His Majesty. That's right. The person who came was his trusted general. He had left Emperor God Wu Ming to guard Wu Ming Divine Kingdom. It could be said that the backbone of Emperor God Wu Ming Divine Kingdom was all here. Emperor God Wu Ming was even more fearless. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor, what are you doing here instead of fighting Emperor God Wu Ming Divine Kingdom? Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor in disdain. Humph, Emperor God Wu Ming, don't be so arrogant. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was furious. Haha, I am going to be arrogant today. After all, it must feel great to ride an Emperor God under my crotch. Emperor God Wu Ming did not hide his gaze as he sized up Purple Heaven Emperor God. In the past, when they were both Emperor Gods, he had never looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor in such a way out of respect. When Emperor God Wu Ming saw Purple Heaven Emperor God's unapproachable demeanor and his beautiful face, Emperor God Wu Ming's body was instantly filled with underworld flame. If it wasn't for the large number of people here, he would have pushed Purple Heaven Divine Emperor to the ground. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's body and swallowed his saliva. Humph, Did I allow you to touch my woman? Yi Hao suddenly snorted and a bolt of lightning surged out from his body. Humph, insignificant skill. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at the bolt of lightning that was attacking him with disdain. Although Emperor God Wu Ming looked disdainful, he saw that the bolt of lightning had killed a few of his martial gods. Hence, Emperor God Wu Ming was very cautious and attacked the bolt of lightning. So weak? You are just trying to be mysterious. Emperor God Wu Ming attacked the bolt of lightning with all his might. The bolt of lightning instantly turned into nothingness and dissipated in the air. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor looked at Yi Hao in surprise. She had seen Yi Hao's lightning attack before and knew that it couldn't be so weak. You are indeed trash. What other tricks do you have? Show me. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Yi Hao with disdain. Let's see who is the trash after the fight. Do you dare to fight with me? Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Wu Ming and said. In actual fact, he had weakened his attack on purpose. This was because he didn't have much lightning energy left. At most, he could kill 3 more ultimate martial gods. There were 5 ultimate martial gods standing behind Emperor God Wu Ming. All the soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Kingdom were there. There were more than 10,000 martial gods and 1 million martial sages. He wasn't confident that he could take down all of them and win. Hence, he thought of provoking Emperor God Wu Ming. As long as he killed Emperor God Wu Ming Holy Kingdom would be in chaos. Trash like you isn't worth my time. You are just dirtying my hands, Emperor God Wu Ming said with disdain. I think you don't have the guts. You can hide in your turtle shell then, coward. Coward, Yi Hao said disdainfully. He only hoped that he could provoke Emperor God Wu Ming with this simple provocation. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to fight head-on. This ignorant brat dares to humiliate my majesty. Your majesty, please allow me to go and kill this little bastard. Emperor God Wu Ming was slightly angry. When he heard what the old ancestor said, he raised his hand to reject. Although he knew that Yi Hao was trying to provoke him, he still couldn't believe that he was being called a coward in front of so many people. He was an emperor god. If he didn't do anything, he would be disgraced. Let me see what you are capable of. Emperor God Wu Ming gave the old ancestors a look. If there was a trap, the old ancestors would save him immediately. Chapter 632. Yi Hao immediately retreated, but he was too late. His head was instantly pierced by Emperor God Wu Ming's golden spear. Ha ha, so you are really a piece of trash. I thought you were some expert. Emperor God Wu Ming laughed proudly when he saw Yi Hao dying under his spear. However, Emperor God Wu Ming did not realize that there was no fear on Yi Hao's face. Instead, there was a strange smile on his face. Yi Hao! Emperor God Mo and Mo Jingfang cried out involuntarily when they saw this scene. On the other hand, Emperor God Zetian panicked, but she was still relatively calm. This was because she believed that Yi Hao would not be killed by Emperor God Wu Ming so easily. Moreover, this was her first battle with Yi Hao. She also felt that she had killed Yi Hao, but Yi Hao was still alive and well. Who is the coward? Emperor God Wu Ming picked up Yi Hao's head and turned to the soldiers of Wu Ming Divine Kingdom as he shouted in high spirits. Ha! 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 The soldiers of Wu Ming Divine Kingdom shouted excitedly when they saw Emperor God Wu Ming's power. How is it? Emperor God Mo, start eating *T. As for the 2 of you, you will serve me and be my female slaves. After killing Yi Hao, Emperor God Wu Ming was even more fearless as he looked at Emperor God Mo and the other 2. I think you should go to hell to eat *T. At this moment, Emperor God Wu Ming suddenly heard a familiar voice beside his ear. How is this possible? Emperor God Wu Ming looked at the tip of his spear subconsciously. At this moment, Yi Hao's head was obviously on the tip of his spear. Why could he still hear Yi Hao's voice? Not good. Suddenly, an unknown fear filled his heart. Emperor God Wu Ming kept his golden spear and wanted to return to the army. Suddenly, there was a strong aura attacking him from all directions. Emperor God Wu Ming took a closer look and realized that it was lightning that was attacking him from all directions. The lightning was like seawater, impenetrable. There was nowhere to run. Ha ha, do you really think that I am so easy to kill? Yi Hao appeared in the lightning region and looked at Emperor God Wu Ming, who was defending himself against the lightning in a hurry. You're not dead? Impossible, you are definitely dead. Emperor God Wu Ming was completely dumbfounded, because he had killed Yi Hao with his own hands and even cut off Yi Hao's head. How could Yi Hao still be alive? Who exactly are you? Emperor God Wu Ming was still in disbelief as he stared at Yi Hao. Idiot, don't you know that there are still clones in this world? Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Wu Ming with ridicule. Although he had wasted a doppelganger, he was able to make Emperor God Wu Ming lower his guard and trap him in the lightning region. This was not a loss. You are so sinister. After hearing Yi Hao's words, Emperor God Wu Ming was extremely regretful and looked at him with hatred. Just as Yi Hao had thought, when he attacked Yi Hao at the beginning, he was still very cautious. Even if Yi Hao used the lightning region, he could still escape. However, the moment he killed Yi Hao, his wariness disappeared and was instead replaced by a sense of pride. After all, in front of the army, as the emperor, he killed a strong enemy with a single spear strike. It could be said that he was in the limelight in front of the army. However, he did not expect that it was Yi Hao's trap. At this moment, Emperor God Wu Ming even wanted to cry. You despicable man, let go of me quickly. Otherwise, I will exterminate your entire clan. Emperor God Wu Ming tried his best to defend against the lightning that came from all directions. You are about to die and you still don't know your place. Yi Hao sneered. Die. Then, Yi Hao controlled the lightning and attacked Emperor God Wu Ming's defense continuously. Don't. I surrender. Let me go. You don't have my orders. Even if you kill me, my subordinates and old ancestor will not let you go. As long as you let me go, I will withdraw from the fight for hegemony in the 10,000 countries continent. I will hand over the Wu Ming holy nation to you. The martial power in Emperor God Wu Ming's body was slowly depleting. The more it was depleting, the more anxious he was. Moreover, he was about to run out of elixirs that could recover his martial power. At this moment, he had no choice but to put down his dignity and beg Yi Hao for mercy. However, Yi Hao looked at him coldly and did not care about him at all. Yi Hao wanted to kill Emperor God Wu Ming with a single punch. With his own strength, he could definitely do it. However, Emperor God Wu Ming did not seem to want to live. He actually dared to humiliate his woman. This was something that Yi Hao could not tolerate. This was why Yi Hao tortured Emperor God Wu Ming like this. Because torturing a person, making him fear death and letting him slowly approach death was the most torturous and cruel thing. This was definitely better than killing Emperor God Wu Ming with a single punch. If Emperor God Wu Ming knew what Yi Hao was thinking, he probably would not have resisted and would have killed himself. I will fight it out with you. Emperor God Wu Ming could not tolerate such torment. He attacked Yi Hao with his bare hands. Even if he died, he would not let Yi Hao have a good time. From his point of view, Yi Hao was not as strong as him. He could only defeat him by relying on lightning. Looking at Emperor God Wu Ming who was attacking him, Yi Hao sneered. You don't know your place. Yi Hao's face turned cold and he slapped Emperor God Wu Ming's face. Emperor God Wu Ming did not have any strength to resist, and he was almost knocked out by Yi Hao. Emperor God Wu Ming was still circulating his martial power to defend against the lightning attack. However, after being slapped by Yi Hao, his circulating martial power was instantly interrupted. The lightning struck his body and his body became a mess of flesh and blood. Emperor God Wu Ming's emperor robe turned into nothingness. One should know that although it was just a robe, It was comparable to a god-level defensive weapon. However, it was useless in front of the lightning power. Emperor God Wu Ming endured the pain and wanted to circulate his martial power to defend himself against the lightning. He did not expect Yi Hao to be so strong. It was completely out of his expectations. Based on the previous slap, it proved that Yi Hao was much stronger than him. Slap! However, before he could stand up, Yi Hao slapped him again. The martial power that Emperor God Wu Ming had just circulated was forcefully interrupted again. Ah! You son of a b****, I will not let you off! Emperor God Wu Ming screamed in pain, and he did not forget to curse. Who are you? Why are you torturing me like this? Just kill me. No. I can't take it anymore. Emperor God Wu Ming could not stop screaming in pain within the lightning. At this moment, he could not circulate his martial power even if he wanted to. Looking at Emperor God Wu Ming's appearance, Yi Hao felt that it was about time. He grabbed Emperor God Wu Ming's neck and withdrew the lightning at the same time. Huff! Seeing that the lightning power had disappeared and he could breathe fresh air again, Emperor God Wu Ming took a deep breath and a smile appeared on his face. It was simply not a place for humans to stay in the lightning. Yi Hao, are you alright? You are not dead? Mo Jingfang looked at Yi Hao in shock. She wiped away the tears in her eyes and rubbed her eyes in disbelief. Chapter 633. Seeing Yi Hao standing there unharmed, one of the generals from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom immediately pointed at Yi Hao and questioned. They did not know what happened just now. They only saw a lightning region appear in the sky and Emperor Wu Ming disappeared. For you. Yi Hao looked at the charred Emperor Wu Ming in his hand and threw him to the general. What the hell is this? That general didn't recognize God Emperor Wu Ming at all as he threw a punch at God Emperor Wu Ming. Emperor Wu Ming was sent flying. Rebel, how dare you hit me? Emperor Wu Ming would never have thought that he would be sent flying by his own subordinate. Emperor Wu Ming fell to the ground and cried out in pain. At the same time, he scolded. When the general heard Emperor Wu Ming's voice, he was shocked and looked at Emperor Wu Ming in disbelief. He could not tell that the charred and bloody person on the ground was the high and mighty Emperor Wu Ming. Save His Majesty! The few old ancestors from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom could not care less about the shock in their hearts and flew towards Emperor Wu Ming. Old ancestors, save me! Hearing the words of the old ancestors, Emperor God Wu Ming seemed to have seen a glimmer of hope for survival. Save you? I'm not done yet. Just as Emperor Wu Ming finished his words, Yi Hao's devilish voice rang in Emperor Wu Ming's ears again. Yi Hao mentioned Emperor Wu Ming. Didn't you ask Emperor God Mo to eat **t? I think it's more suitable for you to eat **t. Little bastard, let go of His Majesty. If you don't let go of His Majesty, I'll kill them all. Just as the few old ancestors finished their words, the soldiers from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom had already surrounded the people from Mo Shin Kingdom. Yi Hao, don't bother about us. Kill this trash. Emperor God Mo was afraid that Yi Hao would let go of Emperor Wu Ming, so he immediately said. The soldiers of the Ink God Nation also chimed in one after another. Yi Hao's expert, kill him. If worse comes to worst, we'll fight it out with them. Yi Hao, we can't let him go. We're not afraid of death. If we bring him along before we die, it'll be worth it. Yi Hao experts, kill him. Don't hesitate. Don't worry about us. Little bastard, you better think carefully. If you kill His Majesty, none of you will leave here alive today. An old ancestor was afraid that Yi Hao would disregard everything and kill Emperor God Wu Ming. Thus, he immediately threatened Yi Hao. Are you threatening me? Yi Hao chuckled as he looked at the patriarch. The situation is clear. So what if I threaten you? If you know what's good for you, release His Majesty. The Patriarch of the Endless Divine Nation chuckled as he looked at Yi Hao. Zi Tian. Yi Hao shouted to Zi Tian, Godly Emperor. Zi Tian, Godly Emperor, immediately nodded, indicating that he understood. Everyone looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and saw him take out a bow and arrow. What is she doing? Could it be some powerful divine artifact? Everyone be careful. The patriarchs of the Wu Ming Divine Nation cautiously stared at the bow in violet sky Divine Emperor's hand and transmitted their thoughts to him at the same time. Swoosh! Under Yi Hao's signal, Zi Tian, Godly Emperor, drew the bow in his hand. The arrow shot into the sky and exploded into a beautiful light. What the hell is this? It doesn't have any offensive power. The patriarchs of the Endless Divine Nation were already prepared to defend themselves. However, after the arrow exploded in the sky, there was no more movement. Ah! Is she putting on a show for us? Just as everyone was laughing, a loud and clear voice resounded through the sky. A cloud-piercing arrow and thousands of soldiers and horses come to meet me. Rumble! As soon as the voice fell, countless experts rushed out from all directions. Looking at the experts rushing out from all directions, the soldiers of the Endless Divine Nation were shocked. The experts rushing out from all directions were no weaker than their own forces. In fact, they were much stronger than them. Where did so many soldiers come from? Are they friends or foes? The patriarchs of the Endless Divine Nation were stunned as they looked around cautiously. It would have been fine if they hadn't looked around. However, when they looked around, they realized that the soldiers of the Endless Divine Nation had been surrounded. Greetings, Your Majesty! The soldiers of the Zhentian Divine Nation who had been subdued by Yi Hao shouted. Greetings, Your Majesty! Greetings, Crown Prince Yi Hao! The soldiers of the Purple Sky Divine Nation also shouted at the Purple Sky Godly Emperor. When did I become the Crown Prince? Yi Hao raised an eyebrow and rubbed his nose as he looked at the Purple Sky Godly Emperor in confusion. If the Purple Sky Godly Emperor was the Crown Prince and he was the Crown Prince, wouldn't the hierarchy be messed up? However, Yi Hao realized that the Purple Sky Godly Emperor was also confused and was shaking his head at him. Yi Hao looked at the smiling patriarchs of the Purple Sky Divine Nation and instantly understood what was going on. These patriarchs must have been behind this. However, now wasn't the time to be calculative. What in the world is going on? God Emperor Mo asked Mo Jingfang as he looked around in shock. The army was like a tidal wave. Grandfather, Yi Hao killed the heaven-shaking Godly Emperor and the patriarchs of the Zhentian Divine Nation. At the same time, he subdued all the experts of the Zhentian Divine Nation. Mo Jingfang immediately said with pride. Hearing Mo Jingfang's words, God Emperor Mo couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't expect Yi Hao to be so strong. Didn't that mean that Yi Hao was still hiding something when he slapped Yi Hao with his 3 palms? He was only in his 20s and he was already so strong. How could there be such a monster in the world? God Emperor Mo swallowed his saliva. Looking at Yi Hao, who was standing proudly in the crowd, God Emperor Mo knew that the Myriad Kingdom continent could no longer contain Yi Hao. This small Myriad Kingdom continent would only limit Yi Hao's development. They're all your men? Although the patriarchs of the Endless Divine Nation didn't want to believe it, they still asked subconsciously. Do you think that you still have the right to ask questions now? Yi Hao smiled and looked at the patriarchs of the Endless Divine Nation. You! The patriarchs of the Endless Divine Nation pointed at Yi Hao angrily, but he couldn't say a word. Because at this moment, the Endless Divine Nation was already at a disadvantage. At this moment, the soldiers of the Endless Divine Nation were being attacked from both inside and outside. Moreover, their emperor was in the hands of the enemy. At this moment, they indeed didn't have the right to ask questions to Yi Hao. What do you want? God Emperor Mo looked at the flustered soldiers of the Endless Divine Nation and looked at Yi Hao angrily. I won't change my words. Go and eat those 10 buckets of shit and I'll let you go. Yi Hao pointed at the 10 buckets. He was a person who knew how to repay kindness. The reason why God Emperor Mo came to attack the endless divine nation was to help him. However, because God Emperor Mo helped him, he was almost forced to eat shit by the endless divine nation. This made Yi Hao furious. Therefore, he had to avenge God Emperor Mo. You want me to eat shit? Dream on. Even if you kill me, I won't do it. The endless divine nation roared in anger. He didn't expect things to change so quickly. Previously, he was the one who was proud of himself and forced God Emperor Mo to eat shit. Chapter 634. You are not eating? Yi Hao raised his eyebrows and looked at Emperor God Wu Ming in his hand. Kill me, I will not eat it. Emperor God Wu Ming roared stubbornly. Haha, I have a way to make you eat it. Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Wu Ming and laughed loudly. Humph! Emperor God Wu Ming snorted coldly. Apparently, he did not believe Yi Hao. After all, he was the one with the mouth. Even if Yi Hao tortured him to death, he would not eat it. What could Yi Hao do? Yi Hao wore an inexplicable smile as he looked at the few old ancestors of Wu Ming divine nation. When Yi Hao looked at them, the few old ancestors could not help but panic. They were afraid of Yi Hao and took half a step back. If any of you feed him shit, I will spare his life. Yi Hao said to the 5 old ancestors of Wu Ming divine nation. Are you serious? The few old ancestors looked at the 10 buckets of feces. At this moment, the buckets of feces had become treasures in their eyes. After all, it was their chance to live. I am a man of my word. The few old ancestors looked at Yi Hao and realized that he was not lying to them. They immediately flew to the buckets of feces. What are you trying to do? I am the Emperor of Wu Ming divine nation. Emperor God Wu Ming panicked when he saw the actions of the old ancestors. Your Majesty, I am sorry. We have no other choice. An old ancestor carried the wooden bucket and walked to Emperor God Wu Ming. Old ancestor, you can't do this to me. I am the Emperor God of Wu Ming divine nation. No, under Emperor God Wu Ming's panicked gaze, an old ancestor walked in front of Emperor God Wu Ming and pinched open his mouth. He carried the bucket of feces and poured it into Emperor God Wu Ming's mouth. Suddenly, a stench filled the air. The old ancestor held his breath and resisted the urge to vomit. He poured the feces into Emperor God Wu Ming's mouth slowly. However, he was afraid that Yi Hao would find fault with him, so the patriarch was very careful. It was as if he didn't want to waste any of it. As for Emperor God Wu Ming, he was struggling with all his might. However, he was locked down by ancestors' power of martial arts. Pour out another bucket and you'll be able to live. Yi Hao looked at the patriarch with satisfaction. However, this kind of scene was indeed slightly disgusting. However, the person he was dealing with was God Emperor Wu Ming. This was revenge for God Emperor Mo. Even if it was disgusting, Yi Hao would still do it. Thank you, Your Majesty Yi Hao. When the patriarch heard Yi Hao's words, it was as if he had heard the sound of nature. A smile immediately appeared on his face. The other patriarchs all looked at that patriarch with envy. Blurred. As for the other bystanders, they were unable to accept this scene. Many of them even began to retch. After all, this was a living person eating shit. Even though they had lived for so long, this was the first time they had seen something like this. Furthermore, this was not just anyone eating shit. This was the famous God Emperor Wu Ming in the myriad countries continent. God Emperor Wu Ming being fed shit by a few patriarchs of the Wu Ming kingdom. This news would definitely cause a commotion in the myriad countries continent. Yi Hao, you're mighty. Yi Hao is mighty. Yi Hao is mighty. On the other hand, it was the soldiers of God Mo kingdom who were humiliated by God Emperor Wu Ming. Until now, they were still suppressing their anger. However, when they saw God Emperor Wu Ming's miserable look, bucket after bucket of shit was poured into God Emperor Wu Ming's mouth. The soldiers of God Mo Kingdom felt their blood boiling as they looked at Yi Hao with admiration and shouted emotionally. "This lad, I did not see wrongly." God Emperor Mo felt relieved when he saw God Emperor Wu Ming eating shit. After all, he was almost forced to eat shit by God Emperor Wu Ming. To him, that was an absolute humiliation. If not for Yi Hao's timely arrival, the one eating shit would not be God Emperor Wu Ming, but him. Looking at God Emperor Wu Ming's painful expression, God Emperor Mo let out a sigh of relief. This brat is really an eye for an eye, an eye for an eye. Yeah, look at how God Emperor Wu Ming ended up in such a state. I can't help but sigh at the impermanence of life. No matter who you offend, don't offend this lad. The patriarchs of Purple Sky Divine Kingdom kept looking at Yi Hao and God Emperor Wu Ming as they discussed softly. Your Majesty Yi Hao, we have fed him the shit. Can you let us go now? The few old ancestors of the Wu Ming Divine Nation finally poured all the excrement into the mouth of the Wu Ming Divine Emperor with tremendous effort. Then, they looked at Yi Hao with a fawning look. Cut off one of his arms or legs before you leave. Yi Hao pointed at God Emperor Wu Ming, who was lying on the ground vomiting. Hearing Yi Hao's words, God Emperor Wu Ming, who was vomiting, could no longer be bothered to vomit and shivered. He looked at the patriarchs coldly and said, "You have already messed up the order of the imperial court by doing this to me. If you hurt me again, will you be able to feel at ease?" Hearing God Emperor Wu Ming's words, the patriarchs' faces turned ugly because God Emperor Wu Ming was right. No matter what, God Emperor Wu Ming was the legitimate God Emperor of Wu Ming Kingdom. According to the teachings of their ancestors, their duty as patriarchs was to protect the past emperors. However, in order to survive, they had already done something disrespectful to God Emperor Wu Ming. If they were to cut off God Emperor Wu Ming's arms, they would not be able to turn back. After all, they were the patriarchs of Wu Ming Kingdom and the guardians of the emperor. In the end, not only did they not protect the emperor, they even hurt their own emperor. Your Majesty Yi Hao, I wonder if we can change our request? One of the patriarchs looked at Yi Hao cautiously and asked, "Do you have a choice in front of me?" Yi Hao looked at the patriarchs of Wu Ming Kingdom coldly and did not give them any face. The patriarchs looked at each other and nodded at the same time. As though they had made a decision, they took out their weapons and walked towards God Emperor Wu Ming. "You are the disgrace of Wu Ming Kingdom. You are not fit to be the patriarchs of Wu Ming Kingdom. Our ancestors will not let you off." Seeing that the patriarchs were really going to attack him, God Emperor Wu Ming was disheartened and shouted with an ashen face, "Your Majesty, you are right." The patriarchs suddenly turned around and launched their strongest attacks towards Yi Hao. No matter what, they had a bottom line. They had a tacit understanding. Therefore, they walked towards Yi Hao to let down Yi Hao's guard. After everyone had let down their guard, they would join forces to kill Yi Hao. This was because they were not only afraid of Yi Hao, but also God Emperor Mo and the patriarchs of Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. With these people around, they would not be able to gain the upper hand if they were to fight. However, as long as these people let down their guard, they would be able to attack Yi Hao. They believed that no matter how strong Yi Hao was, he would not be able to block the attacks of the five of them. As long as they could kill Yi Hao, the problem in front of them would naturally be solved. This was because they realized that no matter if it was Purple Sky Divine Kingdom or God Emperor Mo Kingdom, Yi Hao was their leader. In other words, the reason why these few forces could join forces to attack Wu Ming Kingdom was because of Yi Hao. Chapter 635. Old Ancestors, I have wronged you. Kill that bastard. Emperor God Wu Ming closed his eyes in disappointment. However, he realized that the old ancestors did not attack him. Instead, they turned around and attacked Yi Hao. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Yi Hao with hatred in his eyes as he roared, "Your Majesty, we have no choice but to do so. We will definitely kill this lad and wash away the shame for your majesty. Little bastard, go to hell! The old ancestors of Wu Ming Holy Nation shouted as they gathered their martial strength. They were ready to attack Yi Hao. Good timing! Yi Hao did not show the slightest hint of fear when he saw the patriarchs charging towards him. Instead, he was secretly delighted. What is this lad doing? Why does he look so weird? The old ancestors were disappointed when they did not see any fear on Yi Hao's face. They started to have doubts. Yi Hao, be careful! Mo Jingfang shouted anxiously when she saw the old ancestors rushing towards Yi Hao. Yi Hao, an expert! The soldiers started to worry about Yi Hao as they looked at Yi Hao anxiously. Quick, help him! Emperor God Mo and the old ancestors of Purple Sky Divine Kingdom reacted quickly when they saw the old ancestors of Wu Ming Holy Nation attacking. Well done, old ancestor. I knew that old ancestor had his reasons for doing so. Old ancestor, kill that little bastard and wash away the shame of Wu Ming Holy Nation. No matter how powerful that lad is, he will not be able to stop the attacks of the 5 old ancestors. Old ancestor, you will win. The soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Nation, who were in low spirits, were excited again as they shouted excitedly. Looking at the boiling martial strength around him, he realized that the space around him had been sealed off by the old ancestors of Wu Ming Holy Nation. If it had been someone else, even Emperor God Mo, who was a rank 4 ultimate martial god, he would have died. However, Yi Hao had a smile on his face. He suddenly clenched his fists and said, I'll let you know what true martial strength is. 1 slash. Yi Hao roared. He immediately used the 1 slash that he had comprehended in the secret realm. Yi Hao took out the blood-stained dual sabers. The blood-stained dual sabers seemed to be able to sense the dangerous aura in the surroundings and actually emitted a rumbling sound. This saber was just a superficial martial skill that he had comprehended in the secret realm. However, the system's evaluation was that it was a super heavenly tribulation. This was definitely his strongest martial path. After using the saber, Yi Hao felt that more than half of the martial arts power in his body had been sucked away. However, he did not display his martial power. Instead, he poured it into the blood-scar dual sabers. Looking at it with the naked eye, one would only feel that the blood-scar dual sabers did not change. Yi Hao was speechless at the amount of martial Dao power that was drained. One had to know that even though he was a 9th-order martial god, his martial Dao strength was not at the 9th-order martial god realm. Instead, it was an entire realm above the 9th-order martial god realm. With such a cultivation level, the amount of martial Dao power that could be stored was absolutely terrifying. However, it was this terrifying amount of martial Dao power that was drained by half in an instant. One had to know that when he used the earth-devouring palm, the amount of martial Dao power consumed was not more than 1%. Wouldn't that mean that, if it was an ordinary peak martial god realm expert or even an ultimate martial god realm expert, he would not even be able to use this saber technique? After Yi Hao used the saber, he instantly had a strange feeling that he had never felt before. It was as if any weapon in the world was not as powerful as his saber. This saber could fight the heavens and the earth. It was as if he was the only one in the world. Moreover, countless insights about saber intent appeared in Yi Hao's mind. Yi Hao's entire mind was immersed in a mysterious feeling as he comprehended the saber intent. However, Yi Hao did not realize that when he used the saber, the few imperial soldiers below were using sabers as weapons. At that moment, all the sabers began to tremble and emit rumbling sounds. It was as if all the sabers were bowing towards Yi Hao. One with the saber, heavenly realm. When Emperor God Mo saw this, he was shocked and said in a daze. He did not expect that such a legendary thing would actually appear. Grandfather, what is one with the saber, heavenly realm? Why haven't I heard of it before? Mo Jingfang looked around in shock. All the sabers were no longer under the control of their owners and were emitting rumbling sounds. This scene was very frightening to look at. Even Mo Jingfang herself was looking at her surroundings vigilantly, because she was really afraid that if those sabers were out of control and started attacking, she would have nowhere to run. This is a legend. Legend has it that when a person reaches a certain level of understanding towards a certain weapon, such a situation would occur. Emperor God Mo looked at Yi Hao in the sky. Originally, he thought that Yi Hao had shocked him enough and that he had understood Yi Hao well enough. But now, it seemed that Yi Hao would only give him more and more surprises. He was unable to fully understand Yi Hao, because too many unbelievable things had happened to Yi Hao. Watch Yi Hao's attack carefully. If you can understand a thing or two from it, it will definitely be beneficial to you. When Emperor God Mo saw that Yi Hao had reached such a level, he knew that the few old ancestors of Wu Ming divine nation were no match for Yi Hao. Thus, God Emperor Mo stood at his original spot and didn't go up to help. Instead, he spoke to Mo Jingfang. What's going on? Why can't I control my saber? My saber is a saint weapon. It has recognized its owner. Why does it seem to be out of my control? How did Yi Hao do it? To control everyone's weapons, this is too terrifying. At this moment, all the soldiers who had sabers were shocked beyond words. No matter which empire they were from, they were all speechless. Everyone placed their gazes onto Yi Hao at this time, afraid that they would miss something. The blood-stained twin sabers in Yi Hao's hands looked very ordinary as they slowly slashed in all directions. Yi Hao's attack didn't seem to be flashy at all. It was just a simple slash. The slash looked as if Yi Hao had just slashed out casually. Many people looked at Yi Hao suspiciously. They didn't understand why Yi Hao was all talk and no action. How could a casual swing of the saber injure the 5 patriarchs? Only the experts in the ultimate martial god realm could see how terrifying Yi Hao's simple slash was. They could see the aura of death from the slash. It was a threat to their lives. At this moment, only the 5 old ancestors of Wu Ming divine nation could feel how powerful the slash was. They discovered that the instant Yi Hao used a martial skill, the martial skills they used were instantly locked down. It wasn't just their martial skills. They felt that they were locked. They wanted to move, but they couldn't. The 5 old ancestors only had eyes for the blood-stained dual sabers in Yi Hao's hands. Chapter 636. The 5 old ancestors could only watch as the crimson blades slit their necks. Everything seemed slow, but it happened in an instant. When the heads of the 5 old ancestors fell to the ground, everyone reacted. Why didn't our old ancestors dodge his attack when his attack was so slow? Have the 5 ancestors lost their minds? They died for nothing. It was such a simple attack, and the 5 old ancestors didn't even fight back. They were killed. At that moment, the soldiers of Endless Darkness Holy Nation went crazy when they saw the 5 old ancestors' bodies. The reason for that was because the 5 patriarchs were their guardians. Now that their guardians had been killed, it was even more hopeless for them to stay alive. However, what made them even more confused was why the 5 old ancestors didn't dodge Yi Hao's attack when it was so slow. How could he be so strong? The soldiers of Endless Darkness Holy Nation were in a daze as they muttered in disbelief. When the soldiers of Endless Darkness Holy Nation heard what Emperor God Wu Ming had said, they looked at Emperor God Wu Ming strangely. They didn't understand why Emperor God Wu Ming said that. Was Emperor God Wu Ming really scared out of his wits? One had to know that in their opinion, even an ordinary person, not a warrior, would be able to use that saber move. They couldn't tell how powerful such an ordinary attack was. I, Endless Darkness, am dead. Emperor God Wu Ming looked up and sighed. His tone was filled with unwillingness, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't answer the soldiers because this was the difference in cultivation level. Even if he explained, they wouldn't understand. because even he could only see the trajectory of the saber just now. It was so fast that it was terrifying. The extreme state of fast was slow. That was why many people said that the attack was slow. However, none of the true experts of the extreme martial god realm dared to say that. This was because they had a feeling that they wouldn't be able to resist Yi Hao's attack at all. Soldiers of endless darkness, holy nation, listen up. Emperor God Wu Ming suddenly stood up and looked at the soldiers of endless darkness, holy nation, reluctantly. Every soldier was in low spirits, not to mention their fighting spirit. They were venting their dissatisfaction and discussing the death of their old ancestors. Although Emperor God Wu Ming was already in such a miserable state, his prestige was still present. Therefore, he immediately received the shouts of all the soldiers. All the soldiers drew their weapons. Now that the patriarch was dead, it was time for the final battle. Whether they lived or died, they could only fight with their backs against the wall. Put down your weapons and surrender. Emperor God Wu Ming didn't notice that his voice was trembling when he said this. 2 streams of tears flowed from his eyes. A god emperor cried. Emperor God Wu Ming recalled his glorious life. Up until now, he had never cried. This time, he could no longer hold it in. What? Hearing what Emperor God Wu Ming had said, be it the soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Kingdom or the remaining soldiers, all of them were stunned. Initially, they thought that the real war was coming and that Emperor God Wu Ming was going to fight to the death. However, they had never expected that Emperor God Wu Ming would actually give the order to surrender. Your Majesty, let's fight it out with them. Your Majesty, why are we surrendering? Although we are outnumbered, we can still fight. Your Majesty, we will only know who is stronger and who is weaker after a fight. We can't surrender now. Emperor God Wu Ming wasn't an emperor god for nothing. He had many trusted generals under him, and all of them wanted to fight. This is my last decree. Emperor God Wu Ming's tone was unquestionable. In fact, it wasn't that he didn't want to fight. After seeing how powerful Yi Hao was, he was completely subdued by Yi Hao. He knew that if he continued to fight, he would only let the soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Kingdom die in vain, and it wouldn't change the outcome. Since this was the case, as an emperor god, why didn't he find a way out for his subordinates? Your Majesty Yi Hao, I hope that you will treat them well. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Yi Hao after seeing that all the soldiers had put down their weapons. Unsurprisingly, Emperor God Wu Ming surrendered to Yi Hao and not to Emperor God Zetian or Emperor God Mo, because he knew that his subordinates would only have a good future if they followed Yi Hao. If they followed anyone else, they would definitely end up in Yi Hao's hands. Since this was the case, why didn't they follow Yi Hao from the start? Moreover, even if they were given to Emperor God Zetian or Emperor God Mo, the two of them wouldn't dare to accept them. Yi Hao was also surprised by Emperor God Wu Ming's decision. He didn't expect Emperor God Wu Ming to be so magnanimous at the last moment. Putting aside everything that had happened before, Emperor God Wu Ming was already considered a good emperor god to think for his subordinates at the last moment. According to the thinking of a normal person, with millions of soldiers in hand, they would definitely fight to the death. However, Emperor God Wu Ming didn't do that. Looking at the sincerity in Emperor God Wu Ming's eyes, Yi Hao nodded. As long as they are sincere to me, I will treat them all equally. Then, I thank your Majesty Yi Hao. Let me remind your Majesty that the upper world is dangerous. I hope that you will be careful. What do you mean? Hearing Emperor God Wu Ming's words, Yi Hao's eyes turned cold. He thought that Emperor God Wu Ming's words weren't said casually. There must be something hidden within. I am only saying this much. Emperor God Wu Ming shook his head. He then looked at his subordinates and said reluctantly, Goodbye, my people. Goodbye, Myriad Kingdom Continent. Goodbye, Wu Ming Holy Nation. You can live. Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Wu Ming's appearance. The killing intent in his heart wasn't as strong as it was at the beginning. After all, this was a war of kingship. The winner would be the king and the loser would be the bandit. No one could change this. However, Emperor God Wu Ming's final actions changed his opinion of Emperor God Wu Ming. After all, a person who could think for his subordinates, how bad could he be? Such a person was definitely worthy of respect. Haha, I thank your majesty Yi Hao for your kind intentions. However, what's the point of living as a walking corpse? I will only feel worse if I watch my country being destroyed, Emperor God Wu Ming said. He then pulled out his sword and cut his own throat. Your Majesty! Many soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Nation cried out in grief the moment Emperor God Wu Ming died. That's right. At the last moment, Emperor God Wu Ming sacrificed his life for them. This moved them completely. Bury Emperor God Wu Ming with the highest ceremony in all the holy nations. Bury him according to the standards of an emperor god. Seeing Emperor God Wu Ming commit suicide, Yi Hao gave the order immediately. Those who were worthy of his respect would naturally receive the best treatment. Thank you, Your Majesty. Hearing Yi Hao's order, the soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Nation immediately shed tears of gratitude. After all, there weren't many people who could treat their enemies as well as Yi Hao. Chapter 637. Yi Hao used 3 days of coercion and bribery to raise everyone's loyalty to more than 80%. The Wu Ming god nation that was famous in the Myriad Kingdom continent for hundreds of thousands of years was officially declared dead. But before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. That damned unfilial son, how dare he do such a thing? At this moment, God Emperor Mo's face was filled with anger as he looked at Yi Hao apologetically. Yi Hao, leave this matter to this old man. This old man will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. God Emperor Mo looked at Yi Hao and said. At this moment, Yi Hao's face was gloomy. I will personally deal with this matter. God Emperor Mo swallowed his saliva as his face was filled with guilt. This matter is all Mo Xian's fault. Those soldiers must have been bewitched by that unfilial son. Can you not hurt those soldiers? Yi Hao did not speak. At this moment, he only wanted to tear Mo Xian into pieces. Because news had just spread. Mo Xian had used some unknown method to ally with the remaining forces of Zhentian God Nation. But that wasn't the end of it. What was even more suicidal was that he suddenly sent troops to attack the Violet Heaven God Kingdom and capture the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian. He had even threatened to kill Yi Hao and Imperial Ant and Yi Batian if he did not surrender. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. Yi Hao's killing intent surged. Everyone, attack! Yi Hao ordered. Then Yi Hao looked at God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo, don't follow me. I'm afraid you'll feel uncomfortable when the time comes. I'll go with you personally. This old man will personally kill that unfilial son. At the same time, I'll represent the entire Mo God Nation to submit to you. There will no longer be a Mo God Nation in this world. This old man pleads your majesty not to kill your own soldiers. At this moment, God Emperor Mo had made his decision. He knew that resistance would be futile. Moreover, Yi Hao's goal was to unify the Myriad Kingdom continent. Rather than making things difficult, he might as well surrender. Moreover, he knew that if Mo Xian went against Yi Hao, he would not have a good ending. After all, both the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the profound God Emperor had died at the hands of Yi Hao. What right did he have to oppose Yi Hao? Right now, he wasn't worried about Mo Stain's life or death, but the lives of the Ink God Nation soldiers. He was already bitterly disappointed in Ink. But the soldiers of the Divine Ink Nation were all personally groomed by him. They were all sentimental. Although these soldiers would belong to Yi Hao if they joined Yi Hao, it was still better than sacrificing them for nothing. Emperor God Mo, you've really made up your mind. Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Mo in surprise. However, his expression was solemn as he asked. because if God Emperor Mo did that, he would be able to reduce the entanglement in his heart. Because no one can stop the unification of the 10,000 countries continent. However, he had that kind of relationship with Mo Jingfang. Furthermore, God Emperor Mo had helped him before. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. This was Yi Hao's principle. Therefore, this gave Yi Hao a difficult problem. Should he make a move against the Ink God nation? After all, if the Ink God nation was unwilling to surrender, he could only rely on his military strength to suppress them. But if he relied on his military strength to suppress them, he would feel uneasy. But now that God Emperor Mo took the initiative to suggest it, he would remove the knot in his heart. As for God Emperor Mo's question, it wasn't that he couldn't agree to it. What he was angry about was that Mo Xian had to touch his own family. If he wanted to kill Mo Xian, even the Heavenly Emperor wouldn't be able to stop him. As for those soldiers, they were merely commanded by Mo Xian. They didn't have the right to refuse. Therefore, he could kill them or not. But these people had touched his family. That was different. Even if they were just following Mo Xian's orders, they couldn't do it. Because they couldn't touch his family. However, looking at God Emperor Mo's face filled with anticipation and even pleading, Yi Hao sighed, "I'll try my best." Hearing Yi Hao's words, God Emperor Mo knew that he didn't have to say anything more. "Your Majesty, that Yi Hao will definitely bring his army over. Is it really okay for us to kidnap his parents?" In the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom's palace, an old ancestor asked Mo Xian worriedly. What's there to be afraid of? His parents are in my hands. I don't believe that he won't compromise." Mo Xian snorted coldly. The past few days of Mo Xian could be said to be the most exciting days of his life. After returning to the Divine Ink Nation with a few old ancestors, he used ruthless methods to control all the experts of the Divine Ink Nation. That wasn't the end. He used a huge temptation and at the same time, made use of Yi Hao's killing of Heaven-Shaking God Emperor as a catalyst to subdue the remaining forces of the Heaven-Shaking God Nation. And now, the number of experts in his hands was much more than when the Divine Ink Nation was at its peak. Originally, this was more or less enough. He could sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. He could watch the battle between Yi Hao and the Wu Ming God Nation. But who would have thought that not long after, he received news that Yi Hao had killed Wu Ming God Emperor and the old ancestors of the Wu Ming God Nation. At the same time, he subdued all the soldiers of the Wu Ming God Nation. When he heard this news, he panicked a little. Because even if it wasn't because of the relationship between Yi Hao and Mo Jingfang, just based on the fact that he left with the army at the crucial moment of the battle between God Emperor Mo and the Wu Ming God Nation, Yi Hao would definitely not let him off easily. Moreover, he felt that with God Emperor Mo's temper, he would definitely not let him off. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but scold Wu Ming God Emperor for being useless. He couldn't even kill Yi Hao. Although he complained it was useless. But he didn't want to give up the throne that he had just obtained. After all, the feeling of being the emperor for the past few days was simply too great. And if he lost the throne, his ending would be incomparably tragic. Therefore, he thought of a risky move, which was to force Yi Hao to submit. Since he had already reached this stage, he wasn't afraid of offending Yi Hao anymore. Therefore, he directly sent troops to attack the Purple Sky God Nation and captured the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian. He believed that with the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian in his hands, Yi Hao wouldn't dare to act rashly. "Let's go and take a look in the prison." When he thought of the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian, Mo Ji felt a little uneasy and said to the old ancestor beside him. Now that Mo Ji had specially requested for an old ancestor to follow by his side to protect his safety, one could see how deep Mo Ji's fear of Yi Hao was. Mo Ji passed through many prisons, each of which was heavily guarded. When he reached the deepest part of the prison, two old ancestors were summoned. Two old ancestors, did anything happen? Emoji looked at the two old ancestors and asked. The two old ancestors immediately replied, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. With the two of us watching, nothing will happen." "That's good. Open the door and let me in to take a look." Emoji was relieved after hearing the old ancestors' words. After all, the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian were his trump cards. Whether he lived or died completely depended on the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian. He believed that with Yi Hao's filial piety, he would definitely obediently submit to him. "How's life here, Imperial Ant?" Emoji walked into the prison and looked at the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian, who were tied up with special chains, and asked jokingly. Chapter 638. Slap. Hearing the Imperial Ant's curse, Emoji did not hold back and walked forward to slap her. "Stinking woman, do you really think you're still my Imperial Ant? You're just a prisoner now, a chess piece of mine," Emoji said with disdain. "But you're still quite beautiful. You're indeed the Imperial Ant of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. I wonder if it's a different feeling when doing that." Although the Imperial Ant was not young, she maintained herself very well. Her skin was very white, no different from a young girl's skin. In fact, it was much fairer. Moreover, the Imperial Ant had the temperament of a superior, which made people want to conquer her. The more Emoji looked at the Imperial Ant, the more the evil fire in her heart boiled. Emoji looked around and saw that there was no one around. Suddenly, she laughed lewdly. "Beauty, please serve this emperor well. You dare." The Imperial Ant's eyes turned cold as she shouted. No matter what, the Imperial Ant had experienced more than Emoji. Moreover, the aura that she had cultivated for a long time, although she did not have the slightest strength at this moment, she still scared Emoji. When Emoji heard the Imperial Ant's shout, she subconsciously took half a step back. Then Emoji reacted. "Humph, you don't have any cultivation at all. Why should I be afraid of you? I'll sleep with you first." Thinking of this, Emoji's heart hardened and she wanted to take off the Imperial Ant's clothes. "Cough, Your Majesty." At this moment, the old ancestor suddenly coughed behind her. "What's the matter?" Emoji was very unhappy that her interest was disturbed. She asked coldly. The old ancestor wrinkled his eyes. He did not expect that at this time, Emoji still did not do her job and still had the leisure to do this kind of thing. He did not know whether it was right or wrong to let this kind of person be the Divine Emperor of Divine Emperor Emo. However, the old ancestor suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart and said, "That Yi Hao has already brought an army to the border. Your Majesty, please lead the army to stop them." "I know. Watch her carefully." Although Emoji was unhappy that she could not sleep with the Imperial Ant, she knew what was more important. After speaking to the old ancestor, she tidied up her clothes and left the dungeon. "Yi Hao, you brat, if you want to save your parents, kneel before this emperor." Emoji arrived in front of the two armies under the protection of the patriarch. Although Emoji was prepared, he was still shocked when he saw the soldiers behind Yi Hao. This was because the number of experts behind Yi Hao definitely exceeded the number of experts he had. But when she remembered that she had the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian in her hands, the fear in her heart was instantly expelled. As long as he had Imperial Ant and Yi Batian in his hands, he had nothing to fear. "Unfilial son, stop your evil deeds. Hurry up and release him." God Emperor Mo suddenly walked out from the crowd and pointed at Mo angrily. "It's His Majesty. His Majesty is still alive." "But didn't the second prince say that His Majesty had passed away? What's going on? Did His Majesty lie to us?" Upon seeing God Emperor Mo's appearance, the Emotion Nation's camp immediately broke out into a commotion. Hearing the commotion from the army behind him, Emoji coldly shouted, "Silence." In order to cooperate with Emoji, the two patriarchs beside Emoji immediately released their aura. When the soldiers of the Emotion Nation heard Emoji's cold shout and felt the aura from his body, they could only keep quiet. But each and every one of them looked at Emoji, wanting to get an answer from him. Emoji knew that it wasn't easy to be perfunctory at this moment, so he gathered his emotions and reprimanded God Emperor Emo. Father, you have been bewitched by Yi Hao. It's time for you to wake up. Your son has never thought of seizing your position, but your son will definitely not watch the Emotion Nation be lost in your hands. As long as father doesn't care about the matter between your son and Yi Hao, when this matter is over, your son will definitely welcome father back to the throne. Emoji said a lot of things with great emotion. In short, the meaning was that God Emperor Emo had been bewitched by Yi Hao. He was afraid that God Emperor Emo would give the Emotion Nation to Yi Hao for nothing. So he had no choice but to usurp the throne. But as long as God Emperor Emo didn't stand on Yi Hao's side, he was willing to return the throne. So that's the case. Second God's son has really put in a lot of effort. I didn't expect that His Majesty would be fooled by Yi Hao. But fortunately, Second God's son is reasonable. Luckily, Second God's son is here. Otherwise, the Emotion Nation would have been taken away by Yi Hao. I've said that Second God's son must have his reasons for seizing the throne. Otherwise, the patriarchs wouldn't have supported him. Hearing the discussions of the soldiers behind him, Emoji was secretly happy. He knew that his words had won over many people's hearts. Emoji wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. He had to establish his perfect image in the hearts of the people. As for returning the throne to God Emperor Emo, that was simply bullsh*t. It was absolutely impossible. At the end of his words, Emoji even pretended to touch his eyes, as though he was crying. Unfilial son, you're really an unfilial son. God Emperor Emo didn't expect Emoji to be so good at acting. With just a few words, he had won over the hearts of the people. God Emperor Emo was furious, but he couldn't do anything about it. Listening carefully, God Emperor Emo was so angry that he was fuming with rage. Your Majesty, please listen to Second God's son. He's doing this for the good of the Emotion Nation. Your Majesty, please wake up. Don't be bewitched by Yi Hao. Don't be stubborn. Your Majesty, Second God's son is a good person. You can't ignore his advice. Hearing the words of the soldiers, Emoji was even more delighted. He pretended to wipe his tears. Father, you're making things difficult for me if you continue to stand on the side of the enemy. God Emperor Emo was so angry that he felt as though his lungs were about to explode. Grandpa Emo, you don't have to reason with him. You're just looking for trouble. Looking at God Emperor Mo's angry face, Yi Hao couldn't help but advise. Then what should we do now? God Emperor Emo asked worriedly. After all, Yi Hao's parents were captured. He felt extremely guilty. He never thought that his son would be so rebellious. He even said that it was natural for him to usurp the throne. He originally wanted to advise Emoji to surrender. He might be able to keep his life. After all, Emoji was still his son. Even if his bones were broken, his tendons were still connected. But from the looks of it, Emoji didn't want any chances at all. Let's start the war. Those who surrender will be spared. Those who resist will be killed. Yi Hao looked at the camp of the Emotion Nation and said solemnly. But your parents? God Emperor Emo looked at Yi Hao worriedly. If Yi Hao recklessly started a war, there was no guarantee that Emoji would be driven to desperate action and do something out of line. It's about time. Yi Hao looked at the direction of Zitian City and revealed a smile. Chapter 639. At this moment, there were dozens of heaven-devouring rats moving crazily under Zitian City. Behind these heaven-devouring rats, there was a young man who was following the heaven-devouring rat. That's right, this was Yi Hao's original body. As for the one who was chatting with Emperor God Mo in front of the two armies, it was just his clone. The reason why he had a clone above was to attract Mo Xian's attention. Yi Hao held a map in his hand. It was the layout of Zitian City. Yi Hao was afraid that Mo Xian would be on guard, so he relied on the heaven-devouring rats to travel underground. There are still 3 dungeons left. Let's take a look at this first. Yi Hao had not been idle. He had rushed to Zitian City before the army arrived. However, Zitian City was indeed the imperial capital of Zitian Divine Kingdom. Not to mention the size of the city, there were hundreds of dungeons and prisons. Until now, he had searched through hundreds of prison cells, but he still could not find his parents. The moment he could not find his parents, Yi Hao felt uneasy. Mo Xian, I will not let you off easily. Yi Hao's killing intent rose. Old 5, did you hear that? Did anything happen? In the dungeon where Imperial Ant and Yi Batian were locked, one of the 2 old ancestors suddenly opened his eyes and asked. Movement. When Old 5 heard Old 4's words, he immediately released his thought. Suddenly, his gaze froze and he transmitted his thought to Old 4. Underground. Old 4 had sensed it long ago. Without batting an eyelid, he held his weapon in his hand and stared at the ground. Attack! After a long time, Old 4 suddenly shouted. The 2 of them attacked the ground at the same time. Rumble! Under their attacks, the ground was like tofu, easily shattering into powder. One had to know that this was the ground of Zitian City. It was specially made, so its defense was naturally strong. However, it could not block the attacks of the 2. This was the strength of the ultimate martial god realm. There seems to be blood. He should be dead. Old 5, go and take a look. Old 4 looked at the blood seeping out from the ground and said. Old 5 nodded and carefully went forward to check. Bang! Just as Ol 5 approached, a figure suddenly charged out from the ground and slammed into Ol 5. Ol 5 didn't even have the chance to react. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew out and crashed into the ground. After struggling for a second, he died. Ol 5. Seeing Ol 5 fall to the ground, Ol 4 roared and attacked Yi Hao. Yi Hao glared at number 4 coldly. You're asking for it. Yi Hao could no longer control the rage in his heart. Just like when he attacked Ol 5 earlier, Yi Hao used his full strength without holding back. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to kill an ultimate martial god with a single punch. Yi Hao originally thought that Ol 4 was really not afraid of death and would charge forward. Who knew that Ol 4 would suddenly change directions halfway and run away? Trying to run? Yi Hao sneered when he saw Lao Si's actions. No one in the ultimate martial god realm would be able to escape from him. 1,000 needles break. Ol 4 sensed the movement behind him and became nervous. He didn't expect Yi Hao to be so fast that he almost caught up with him. Without hesitation, Ol 4 used his famous hidden weapon. The hidden weapon he used was a magic needle made of special materials. Each needle was at the divine level, and he had spent a lot of resources to make almost 1,000 of them. He would not use them unless he had no other choice. Moreover, he only needed one needle to launch a sneak attack on an expert of the same level and seriously injure him. Moreover, he had smeared a special poison on the needles. As long as someone touched the poison, they would be paralyzed and unable to use their martial arts power. This time, he sensed the aura of death from Yi Hao's body. Therefore, he was worried that he didn't have enough magic needles to hurt Yi Hao. So, he endured the pain and threw all his magic needles at Yi Hao. Humph, such a petty trick. Looking at the densely packed needles that were shooting towards him, Yi Hao did not sense the slightest bit of danger. Yi Hao didn't defend himself. He ignored the magic needles and rushed toward Ol 4. Ha ha ha, you're courting death. Ol 4 was stunned when he saw Yi Hao's action. Then, he was overjoyed. At first, he was worried that the magic needles wouldn't hurt Yi Hao. However, Yi Hao had underestimated his magic needles and was courting death. He couldn't blame Ol4. Old 4 seemed to have already seen the scene of Yi Hao being pierced by 1,000 needles. He couldn't help but stop in his tracks. Ol4 looked at Yi Hao mockingly and a mocking smile appeared on his face. However, he was stunned in the next second. Bang! 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 Ol4 looked at Ol4 expectantly and the countless magic needles hit Yi Hao's body. However, they fell to the ground as if they had hit steel. On the other hand, Yi Hao wasn't hurt at all. This. Ol4 looked at Yi Hao as if he was looking at a monster. He was speechless. He wondered if his needles had been swapped. Those were magic needles. How could they be so weak against Yi Hao? Run! Ol4 reacted quickly. Since the magic needles couldn't hurt Yi Hao, then he was no match for Yi Hao. Ol4 didn't hesitate anymore. He turned around and started to run. You still want to run? Yi Hao waved his hand and a bunch of magic needles appeared in his hand. Yi Hao shot the magic needles at Ol4's back. Whoosh! 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 The magic needles pierced through the air and made the air explode. No! Hearing the piercing sound behind him, Ol4 felt that his life was in danger. He's courting death. Old Fourth regretted that he had not expected that the needle he had shot out would not only fail to attack Yi Hao, but instead become a weapon for Yi Hao to attack him. Ol4 didn't dare to look back. He was afraid that if he did, he would slow down. Hence, he could only rely on his sharp hearing to dodge. Whoosh! Suddenly Ol4 groaned. His body stiffened and he fell to the ground. If one looked closely, they would see a silver needle on his shoulder. Ol4 was extremely regretful. However, he couldn't move his body. He knew that the poison he had applied to the needle had taken effect. Ol4 watched as Yi Hao walked towards him. His eyes were filled with panic and fear. Ol4 wanted to beg for mercy, but he couldn't open his mouth. At this moment, Ol4 was lying on the ground in a vegetative state. Yi Hao glanced at Ol4. How dare you capture my parents? Die! Yi Hao said in a low voice. At the same time, he kicked Ol4's head. Ol4's head exploded like a ripe watermelon under Yi Hao's kick. Chapter 640. Yi Batian, who was covered in wounds, slowly opened his eyes when he heard his aunt's voice. It's all because I'm useless. I couldn't protect you and even caused trouble for my son. Yi Batian panted heavily and said weakly, If that Emodian really wants to use me to threaten my son, I'd rather kill myself. I'll accompany you. His aunt said gently. She sounded like a woman who followed her husband's lead. Although this was partly because of their deep love for each other, it was more because of her love for Yi Hao. As parents, they did not want to see someone use them to threaten their son. Since they could not help their son, they would try their best not to implicate him. They were still alive because they wanted to see Yi Hao one last time. Bam! At that moment, the door of the dungeon was kicked open and a figure walked in. Father, mother! Yi Hao looked at his tied-up parents and could no longer hold back his tears. He immediately went forward to untie them. Yi Batian and his aunt were surprised when they heard Yi Hao's voice. Then, a joyful smile appeared on their faces. When Yi Hao untied Yi Batian immediately gasped. Yi Hao then realized that Yi Batian's body was badly mutilated. In some places white bones could be seen. When Yi Hao saw this, his eyes turned cold and murderous intent radiated from his body. He asked coldly, Father, who did this? It was the two patriarchs and Emodian from the Mozhen nation. They scolded you and your father was angry, so he retorted. That's how he ended up being tortured, the aunt said with heartache as she looked at Yi Batian's injuries. Emodian, that bastard. I must kill him. The aunt was furious when she thought about how she had almost been raped by Emodian. She was the aunt of an ultimate martial god. When had she ever been humiliated like this? Father, mother, leave this matter to your son. Yi Hao had already sentenced Emoji and the other patriarchs to death. This was because anyone who dared to touch his loved ones would not be allowed to live in this world. This was his bottom line. Yi Hao took out some healing pills and fed them all to Yi Batian. Dad, how do you feel? Yi Hao looked at Yi Batian with concern. Imperial Aunt held Yi Hao's hand and looked at Yi Batian with concern. Her eyes were filled with love. After a while, Yi Batian opened his eyes and smiled. My internal and external injuries are basically healed. I'll be fine after a few days of rest. That's good. Hearing that Yi Batian was fine, Yi Hao was relieved. Mother, where's ZMO? Why haven't I seen her for so long? Yi Hao had thought that ZMO had been in seclusion in Zitian City. He had too many trivial matters on hand, and had not had the chance to ask. However, Zitian City had been occupied by Emoji, and he had not seen ZMO, so he could not help but worry. Who knew that when Imperial Aunt heard ZMO, her face instantly turned ugly. That girl's sigh. I'll tell you when the war is over. Hearing Imperial Aunt's words, Yi Hao's heart trembled. He felt that something must have happened. Otherwise, Imperial Aunt would not have such an expression. Father, mother, you can rest in my special space for a while. I'll come back to find you after I kill Emoji. Seeing that his mother was unwilling to say more, Yi Hao did not pursue the matter. He only wanted to end the war quickly and then ask about ZMO's whereabouts. This was because ZMO was the first girl he had fallen in love with in this strange world. In Yi Hao's heart, he also had a special kind of love for ZMO. It was even stronger than his love for other women. It could be said that Yi Hao's love for each of his current women was the same. However, his love for ZMO was a little more. No, mother wants to kill Emoji personally. Imperial Aunt rejected Yi Hao's suggestion directly. All right then. Since his mother had said so, Yi Hao could not refuse anymore. Come on, my Yi Hao. Kneel down before me. Maybe I'll be happy and let you see your parents. Emoji looked at Yi Hao arrogantly. He believed that Yi Hao would definitely submit. Everyone attack. Yi Hao immediately gave the order to attack. Yi Hao, your parents are still in Emoji's hands. Emperor Zitian immediately advised. That's right. No matter what, we have to save them first. Emperor God Mo also said anxiously. Yi Hao, I understand second uncle's character. He's someone who's capable of doing anything, Mo Jingfang added. They were afraid that Yi Hao would act rashly and force Emoji to do something desperate. It would not be good if Emoji hurt Imperial Aunt and Yi Batian. Don't worry, I've already saved them. Yi Hao's avatar said with a smile. What? You've already saved them? Everyone was shocked and they could not believe Yi Hao's words. Do you still remember that I asked you for the layout of Purple Sky City? Yi Hao said with a smile when he saw the look of disbelief on Emperor Zitian's face. Although I've given you the layout of the city, Emoji will definitely keep a close eye on your parent. He's already on guard. How did you save them without Emoji noticing? Emperor Zitian asked the question that puzzled everyone. Looking at everyone's curious faces, Yi Hao smiled and pointed to the ground. Everyone looked at the ground and they were even more shocked. Mo Jingfang asked directly, You've been with us all this time. How did you save them from underground? You should know that the ground of Purple Sky City is specially built. Even an ordinary martial god would not be able to dig it. How did you manage to dig a tunnel and save them without anyone noticing? Emperor Zitian was equally shocked. Fortunately, Yi Hao was on their side. Otherwise, it would be too terrifying. Emperor Zitian was very confident in the defense of Purple Sky City, especially the ground. However, Yi Hao was able to enter Purple Sky City from underground. Didn't that mean that Purple Sky City's defense was nothing to Yi Hao? Yi Hao did not have time to explain because the battle had already begun. Close to 3 million martial sages and 30,000 martial gods charged towards Purple Sky City. With so many experts, the martial power they brought along seemed to tear the entire space apart. As for those with low cultivation, they had already escaped from this place. Fortunately, this was the top region of the Myriad Kingdom continent. Otherwise, the space would not be able to withstand the attacks of so many experts. The remaining forces of Divine Ink Nation and Gentian Divine Nation added together made up half of Yi Hao's experts. However, it was obvious that Divine Ink Nation and Gentian Divine Nation were at a disadvantage. God Emperor Mo, what's going on? Didn't you say that Yi Hao would not attack? What's going on? The current God Emperor of Gentian Divine Nation looked at Emoji anxiously and asked. Chapter 641. Emperor God Emoji, quickly think of a solution. The new Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation was getting more and more anxious. This was because the two armies on the battlefield had already clashed. It was a completely one-sided battle. Their soldiers could only resist with all their might and keep retreating. They did not have the strength to fight back at all. Shut up! Emoji, who was already impatient, said impatiently when he heard the new Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation's incessant nagging. The new Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. I don't know why this brat didn't care about the comfort of his parents and initiated a war. Emoji frowned. He was also puzzled. Old ancestor, capture his parents for me. I don't believe that this brat won't submit. Emoji ordered the old ancestor beside him. The old ancestor knew that this was no small matter and immediately flew toward the Purple Sky City. Emperor God Moji, will it really work to capture that brat's parents? If it doesn't work, I will surrender. The new Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation said worriedly. Emoji's face turned cold when he heard the new Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation's words. He wanted to kill the new Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation. Fortunately, he was still calm and knew that this was not the right time to make a move. Emoji hid his killing intent and said with a smile, "Don't worry, Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation. Why would I harm you? If I did, I wouldn't be able to live either." Seeing the sincerity on Emoji's face, the new Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation felt that Emoji's words made sense. He nodded and said, "I hope so. Damn it, why aren't they back yet?" Emoji said impatiently after waiting for a long time. "Not good, Your Majesty." At this moment, the old ancestor suddenly returned. Emoji frowned when he saw that the old ancestor had returned alone. He asked, "Why did you come back alone? Where are that brat's parents?" The new Emperor God of Gentian Divine Nation was also puzzled and looked at the old ancestor. After all, this was a matter of life and death. The patriarch panted heavily, still in shock, and said, Old 5 was killed, and the person was taken away." What? Hearing those words, the crowd's expressions all changed. "Ancestor, you're joking, right?" Emoji felt as if his body had fallen into a bottomless ice cave. However, a look of disbelief immediately appeared on his face. "I've made such a tight arrangement, and there are even 2 patriarchs protecting me. How can there be no movement at all?" "Patriarch, you're not joking with me, right?" At this moment, Emoji's eyes were red, and he grabbed the ancestor's shoulder as if he had gone mad. "Your Majesty, please calm down." Even though Emoji was a god emperor, his seniority and strength were lower than hers. In front of so many people, Emoji grabbed his shoulder and questioned him. This made the old ancestor feel very embarrassed, so he couldn't help but remind him. "Calm down? How can I calm down? That little bastard's parents were my trump card. Now that my trump card is gone, what do you want me to do?" Emoji roared with bloodshot eyes. Seeing that Stain had already lost his rationality, the old ancestor could only say, "I saw a hole in the ground of the dungeon. Someone must have rescued him from there. It's over, I don't want to play with you anymore, I want to surrender. I want to surrender. Hearing the old ancestor's words, the new god emperor of Gentian's last hope was extinguished. He muttered dispiritedly as if he had lost his soul. You want to surrender? Wishful thinking. You and I are in the same boat. You and I kidnapped that kid's parents. Do you think that kid will let you go if you surrender? Emoji sneered when he heard the new god emperor of Gentian's words. Then what should I do? Tell me what to do, I don't want to die. The new god emperor of Gentian roared. Besides, I didn't participate in the kidnapping of Yi Hao's parents. It was all your doing. Emoji sneered. So what? Do you think that little bastard will listen to your explanation? The new god emperor of Gentian was anxious, but there was nothing he could do. Seeing the new god emperor of Gentian's expression, Emoji smiled and said, Don't worry, I have a backup plan. I won't allow Yi Hao to be so arrogant. God Emperor Emoji, do you still have a backup plan? Hearing Emoji's words, the new god emperor of Gentian couldn't help but have a glimmer of hope. Even the remaining 3 elders of the divine ink kingdom looked at the ink stains in surprise. They had never heard of Emoji having a backup plan. Come out, my allies! Emoji flew into the sky proudly and shouted. King Kong Clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. Black Wolf Clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. Giant Tiger Clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. Giant Dragon Clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. Black Deer Clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. At this moment, sounds suddenly rang out around the Purple Sky City, followed by the roars of beasts. It's the Beast Clan. Emoji, you can actually get the Beast Clan to come out? An old ancestor looked at Emoji in shock, and even called him by his name. And? Hearing the old ancestor call him by his name, Emoji couldn't help but frown. The old ancestor felt Emoji's sharp gaze and knew that Emoji was able to get the Beast Clan to come out. That was why he couldn't fall out with Emoji at this moment. The old ancestor immediately apologized with a face full of smiles. Your Majesty, please calm down. This old official made a mistake. At this moment, the old ancestor no longer addressed himself as an old ancestor like before. Instead, he addressed himself as an old official. This was clearly the rhythm of Emoji lowering his head to express his goodwill. Your Majesty Emoji, how did you do it? We are saved. The new God Emperor of Heaven, shaking God Emperor, had a joyful expression, and the dispirited look on his face disappeared instantly. Didn't you want to surrender to that little bastard Yi Hao? Emoji raised his eyebrows and said coldly. The new God Emperor of Heaven, shaking God Emperor's face, changed again and again. Although he was unhappy, he was still a God Emperor. What right did Emoji have to speak to him in such a tone? But when he thought about how these Beast Clan reinforcements were all because of Emoji's face, if his heaven-shaking God nation wanted to get out of danger, he could only rely on Emoji. Your Majesty Emoji, that was just a joke. You don't have to take it seriously. My alliance with Your Majesty Emoji is sincere. How could I betray our alliance? That's great. Although Emoji agreed with the new God Emperor of Heaven, shaking God Emperor on the surface, he had already sentenced him to death in his heart. It was just that now wasn't the time to make a move. Emoji looked at the battlefield. At this moment, the soldiers on his side were being suppressed by Yi Hao's people and were still retreating. Chapter 642. Oh no, why are the beasts attacking? This is bad. Emperor God Mo's face changed when he saw the beasts appearing from all directions. Judging from their auras, the weakest of the beasts were martial sages, and there were quite a number of martial gods. One should know that the beasts were huge and much stronger than humans. Although there were only a few 100,000 beasts, they were not to be underestimated. Every single one of the beasts attacked with their own bodies, and they were fearless. Every single one of them could defend against a few martial artists of the same cultivation realm. Rumble! At this moment, the ground started to shake. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. Is that a skeleton? Impossible, how could an undead spirit appear here? Emperor God Mo frowned when he saw the skeleton that was close to 100 feet tall. Mo Jingfang suddenly said, "Grandfather, this skeleton looks familiar. It looks like the diamond skeleton that I bumped into when I was gathering herbs for you." Kill. As soon as the giant skeleton appeared, dozens of martial gods appeared and attacked the skeleton. Ha ha, a bunch of ants die. The giant skeleton let out a weird laugh. It then raised its hand and slapped the group of martial gods. Boom. With just one hit, the martial gods were sent flying. They did not have the strength to fight back in the hands of the giant skeleton. So strong, let me have a go. Emperor God Mo was shocked when he saw that the dozens of martial gods were not a match for the giant skeleton. However, he was not afraid and rushed forward. Go and help Emperor God Mo. Emperor God Zetian said when he saw Emperor God Mo attacking. The few old ancestors of the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom rushed forward when they received the order from Emperor God Zetian. Ha ha ha, it's old man Mo. You are not dead yet. Let me send you on your way. The giant skeleton recognized Emperor God Mo when he saw him. It let out a weird laugh and hammered at Emperor God Mo. We don't know who will send who. Come on. Emperor God Mo's face turned serious. The reason being that the giant skeleton had easily eliminated more than 10 martial god realm experts. It was obvious that the giant skeleton's strength was not to be underestimated. As such, God Emperor Mo did not hold back at all as he unleashed all of his strength towards the head of the gigantic skeleton. Sensing the direction of God Emperor Mo's attack, the huge skeleton immediately used its huge arms to block. Ka-cha-cha! When God Emperor Mo's weapon landed on the skeletal arm, a shattering sound could be heard. In the end, God Emperor Mo's face did not reveal a trace of a smile. Instead, his face was filled with fear. That was because when all of his power landed on the skeleton's body, traces of cracks actually appeared on the enormous skeleton's arm. These tiny cracks were negligible to the giant skeleton. It was as if they did not cause any harm to it at all. Ha ha ha, God Emperor Mo, you are really old. Your attacks are completely useless. The gigantic skeleton looked at the shocked God Emperor Mo and laughed. You're done attacking. It's my turn now. The moment the gigantic skeleton finished speaking, it raised its other hand and grabbed towards God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo was shocked. He did not dare to take the attack head-on and immediately retreated. Although God Emperor Mo's retreating speed was fast enough, the speed of the gigantic skeleton was even faster. In the blink of an eye, it was about to land on God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo's eyes dimmed. He knew that he was doomed. Subconsciously, he used his weapon to block in front of him. Rumble! Rumble! A few loud sounds could be heard. God Emperor Mo raised his head and saw that it was God Emperor Purple Heaven and the others. They were attacking the gigantic skeleton's arm at the same time, blocking the attack from the gigantic skeleton. God Emperor Mo, retreat quickly. We can't hold on any longer. God Emperor Purple Heaven gritted his teeth and transmitted a message to God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo was extremely touched. However, he was not an ungrateful person. God Emperor Purple Heaven had saved him. How could he leave God Emperor Purple Heaven in danger? When God Emperor Mo saw the gigantic skeleton, God Emperor Purple Heaven and the others trying their best to resist, God Emperor Mo's heart sank. Secret skill of the Mo world. God Emperor Mo stopped at his original position. With a roar, he started to use the secret skill of the Mo family. God Emperor Mo. Seeing God Emperor Mo using the secret skill, God Emperor Purple Heaven was anxious. He was worried for God Emperor Mo. This was because all the secret skills in the Myriad Kingdom continent were martial skills that could deal 1,000 damage to the enemy and 800 damage to the user. Although using the secret skill could greatly increase one's attack power, the consequences were equally disastrous. If we don't use the secret skill, we will also die. God Emperor Mo laughed. However, his laughter was filled with bloodthirst. The secret skill that God Emperor Mo was using was created by the founder of the Mo family. It was said that the founder had ascended to the upper world long ago. As for the secret skill of the Mo world, it had become a secret skill of the Mo family. Only the direct descendants of the Mo family could use it. After using the secret skill of the Mo world, it would turn a space into a space under one's control. In this space, one's martial power could increase by 10 times. On the other hand, the enemy would not be able to use any martial power in this space, and their movements would become sluggish. After seeing God Emperor Mo using the secret skill, the gigantic skeleton seemed to be wary of it. Its attacks towards God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest became even more ferocious. All of you get lost. When the gigantic skeleton saw that God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest were attacking it relentlessly and that God Emperor Mo's secret skill was about to be completed, it roared and attacked. Boom! There was a loud sound as God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest clashed with the gigantic skeleton once again. PFFF, this time, the gigantic skeleton was really anxious. The strength of its attacks was much stronger than before. God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest could only feel their internal organs churning and blood trickled down the corner of their mouth. Get lost. Die. The gigantic skeleton roared again and attacked God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest. Hold on. God Emperor Purple Heaven's hair was disheveled and blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. However, he still insisted on shouting. As for the rest of the old ancestors, they were not in a good state either. However, they did not give up as they gritted their teeth and charged forward once again. Because they knew that if they were to retreat now, none of them would be able to escape. The gigantic skeleton was enraged. It did not expect these ants to be so reckless and dare to block it. In fact, it was also anxious. Because it had heard of the power of the secret skill, it did not dare to try it out recklessly. Therefore, at this moment, it only wanted to kill God Emperor Mo. As long as God Emperor Mo was killed, the secret skill would not be released. Chapter 643. This time around, the attack was much stronger than before. Purple Heaven God Emperor and the rest could no longer withstand it as they were sent flying. Old man, die. After Purple Heaven God Emperor and the rest were sent flying, the huge skeleton charged towards Emperor God Mo, wanting to smash him into pieces with a single punch. Mo world, open! Just as the gigantic skeleton's mountain-like fist was about to land on Emperor God Mo's body, Emperor God Mo suddenly shouted out, "Eh!" The huge skeleton could clearly feel that the surrounding martial arts energy had nothing to do with him. And most importantly, his fist suddenly stopped in midair, unable to move forward even an inch. Break for me. Emperor God Mo felt that his strength had increased by tenfold. He had experienced this feeling once before. However, he also knew that this strength couldn't last for too long. Hence, he knew that he had to end this battle quickly. Emperor God Mo roared as he slashed the arm of the huge skeleton with the weapon in his hand. Boom, crack, crack. Just then, a huge cracking sound could be heard. A huge crater appeared on the arm of the giant skeleton. Moreover, there were many grooves on the arm of the giant skeleton. It was obvious that the attack this time around was much stronger than before. One must know that the previous attack could only cause a slight crack on the arm of the huge skeleton. Wah, I'm going to kill you! Seeing how his arm was slashed, the huge skeleton roared furiously. Let's see who's going to kill who. Relying on his secret skill, Emperor God Mo wasn't afraid of the huge skeleton as he continued to attack the huge skeleton. As for the huge skeleton, in terms of agility, it was slightly weaker than Emperor God Mo. However, the attack range of the huge skeleton was extremely huge. Hence, the two huge arms of the huge skeleton were like two small mountains as they swept in all directions, attacking Emperor God Mo. On the other hand, Emperor God Mo relied on his sharp dodging ability to attack the huge skeleton's body continuously. At this moment, Emperor God Mo didn't care about anything else. Wherever he could attack the huge skeleton's body, he would attack that spot immediately. His actions weren't sloppy at all. Every time he attacked the huge skeleton's body, he would bring away a huge amount of bone fragments. "Ant, I'm not done with you." At this moment, the huge skeleton's heart was burning with rage as it roared furiously. "This king wants to see how long you can last." Although the giant skeleton was being attacked non-stop, its combat strength still did not decrease. The gigantic skeleton's fists were already moving like a machine as it continuously attacked God Emperor Mo. This skeleton is so powerful. Even when God Emperor Mo used his secret technique, he still couldn't kill it. "Your Majesty, do you think God Emperor Mo can win?" "If God Emperor Mo doesn't kill those skeletons now, we will all be finished once the secret skills time is up." At this moment, the Purple Heaven God Emperor and the others had already retreated to the side. After consuming healing pills, they discussed worriedly. "Why didn't Yi Hao make a move? If he makes a move, skeleton won't be so difficult to deal with." One of the patriarchs immediately thought of Yi Hao. That was his avatar. His main body is busy with something. What could be more important than repelling the enemy? Upon hearing the Purple Sky God Emperor's words, the third Old Master couldn't help but grumble. "Third Old Master, Yi Hao must have gone to save Zi Luolan and the others." Hearing the dissatisfaction in the third Old Master's voice, the great Old Master immediately spoke out. Actually, Yi Hao had already saved his parents long ago. Furthermore, he had indeed gone to do something very important. Furthermore, it was something that concerned the outcome of this war. "If you have the capabilities, don't jump. Fight me head-on." God Emperor Mo was like an agile monkey as he attacked various parts of the gigantic skeleton's body. However, the gigantic skeleton couldn't do anything to God Emperor Mo as it roared out furiously. God Emperor Mo was actually feeling anxious in his heart. After using his secret technique, the strength and speed of his attacks increased tremendously. Furthermore, it caused quite a bit of damage to the gigantic skeleton's body. However, these damages were negligible when placed on the gigantic skeleton. Furthermore, the most vital part of the skeleton was the center of its head. The soul of the gigantic skeleton was all there. As long as the soul of the gigantic skeleton was destroyed, the gigantic skeleton would be finished. However, the gigantic skeleton knew of its own weakness as well. Therefore, it protected its head extremely well. If God Emperor Mo couldn't even touch the gigantic skeleton's head, how could he accurately attack the center of its head? Furthermore, even though his speed was slightly faster than the gigantic skeleton's speed wasn't slow either. Therefore, after attacking a spot, he had to change to another spot. Otherwise, he might be attacked by the gigantic skeleton. Therefore, he was unable to continuously attack a certain spot on the gigantic skeleton's body. If he couldn't continuously attack, he wouldn't be able to cause any substantial damage. "No, it's time to retreat." God Emperor Mo could feel that the secret technique's duration was almost up. However, he didn't manage to kill the gigantic skeleton. His face was filled with unwillingness. However, he had no other choice. If he were to forcefully persist, he would enter a period of weakness after the secret technique ended. By then, he wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. Only death would await him. The gigantic skeleton wasn't stupid. It could clearly sense God Emperor Mo's intentions. Since God Emperor Mo had attacked it for so long, it had long been enraged. At this point, it wouldn't let God Emperor Mo escape. Oh no, God Emperor Mo doesn't seem to be able to hold on any longer. The great old ancestor of Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom said anxiously. Let me use my secret technique to save grandfather. Mo Jingfang was anxious and wanted to use her secret technique. Hearing Mo Jingfang's words, Purple Heaven Divine Emperor immediately stopped her. Your cultivation is too low. Even if you use your secret technique, you won't be able to cause any harm to him. Let me do it. But Mo Jingfang looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor gratefully. However, she was embarrassed to let Purple Heaven Divine Emperor do it. After all, the side effects of using the secret technique were too great. No buts. Old ancestors, save him. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's tone was firm and fearless. Hearing Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's words, the old ancestors didn't hesitate. Purple Luo Heavenly Realm. You forced me to do this. Seeing Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and the rest using their secret technique, the gigantic skeleton was even more furious. Earth Terminus Black Chi. The gigantic skeleton roared. From its body, a black light was emitted and surged towards God Emperor Mo. What is this? Looking at the black chi that was surging towards him, God Emperor Mo felt a dangerous aura from the black chi. One should know that the gigantic skeleton was strong. Just by relying on its body's strength, it was enough to defend against God Emperor Mo. Chapter 644. Sensing the extraordinariness of the Earth Terminus Black Chi, God Emperor Mo stopped attacking and retreated without hesitation. But who would have thought that the speed of the Earth Terminus Black Chi was faster than him by a little? Shit! God Emperor Mo was panicking, because at this moment, something even more terrible had happened, and that was the time for the secret technique to be used was up. God Emperor Mo gradually felt the energy in his body being sucked dry and his speed was slowing down. Just then, the Black Chi seized the opportunity and entered God Emperor Mo's body. God Emperor Mo forced himself to calm down. At the same time, he wanted to use his martial arts to expel the Black Chi from his body. But he then realized that his body was like a dried-up well. There was no longer any trace of martial arts in his body. God Emperor Mo could only allow the Black Chi to invade his body and invade his consciousness. God Emperor Mo felt that his body was no longer under his control. His consciousness was gradually falling into a coma. Ha ha ha, my slave, serve me forever. You will never have the chance to shine. The gigantic skeleton was like a devil's voice that filled God Emperor Mo's mind. God Emperor Mo's eyes were clear and turbid. It was obvious that God Emperor Mo's consciousness was still resisting and struggling. However, after struggling for a short while, God Emperor Mo's eyes turned completely turbid. Furthermore, there was even a lump of black chi in his eyes. He bowed towards the gigantic skeleton in a daze. Yes, my master. I will be your servant forever. Grandfather. Looking at God Emperor Mo's demonic state, Mo Jingfang shouted anxiously. Save God Emperor Mo. Although Purple Heaven God Emperor did not know what the Earth Terminus Black Chi was, he shouted out worriedly when he saw the state God Emperor Mo was in. After all, God Emperor Mo used the secret skill to save them. Now that God Emperor Mo was in trouble, they should save him. Ha ha, no need to rush. All of you will become my slaves. Looking at Purple Heaven God Emperor and the rest, the gigantic skeleton was not afraid at all. Instead, it laughed excitedly. Vajra skeleton, you did not disappoint me. Looking at the gigantic skeleton subduing God Emperor Mo so easily, Mo Ji was not sad at all. Instead, he was smiling. Why didn't I kill that old man? Seems like I should find time to inform Vajra. Mo Ji muttered. Because in his eyes, royal authority was the most important. The longer God Emperor Mo lived, the more uneasy he felt in his heart. Upon hearing Mo's words, the patriarchs around him couldn't help but frown. They didn't know whether it was right or wrong to choose to follow the ink. Someone like Mo was simply too heartless. He even treated his own imperial father like that. Thus, how good would he treat them in the future? However, what shocked them even more was the strength of the giant skeleton. That was because they were extremely clear about God Emperor Mo's power. He could only be described with the word valiant. Furthermore, he had even used a secret skill to increase his strength by tens of times. One could imagine how strong God Emperor Mo was. However, even such a valiant God Emperor Mo was unable to cause any harm to the gigantic skeleton. At most, it would cause some light injuries to the giant skeleton. Even he himself had been turned into a slave by the giant skeleton. But thinking about it, if God Emperor Mo was like this, wouldn't they be even more so? Your Majesty, do you know what that black chi is? An ancestor asked curiously and cautiously. After all, if they knew the function of the black chi, what would they do if they were to face it? After all, the situation was developing too quickly. They couldn't imagine what would happen in the next second. Furthermore, the black chi was too terrifying. It could turn a person into a slave instantly. This was worse than killing a person. After all, turning into a slave without consciousness was akin to turning into a puppet. In the future, they would have to live in such a muddle-headed body. They could only listen to the orders of the giant skeleton and couldn't do anything else. This King Kong skeleton was a genius of the King Kong clan. After disappearing for hundreds of years, when he reappeared, he no longer looked like a normal King Kong. His entire head had turned into a skeleton. It was said that the reason why he disappeared for hundreds of years was because he went to the ancient demon region. However, looking at his appearance, it should be true. As for this black chi, it should be a cultivation technique that he obtained from the ancient demon region. Furthermore, when he turned into a skeleton, he was despised by the King Kong clan and was expelled from the King Kong clan. However, not long ago, he returned to the King Kong clan and subdued all the King Kong experts. Hearing the old ancestors' question, Mo didn't hide anything and told them everything he knew. Mo reckoned that this wasn't a secret. Since he was bored now, he could tell them to pass the time. Hearing about the ancient demon region, the old ancestors of the Gentian divine nation had a change in expression. Obviously, they had heard of the ancient demon region. One must know that the ancient demon region was a place full of mysteries and dangers to the experts of the Myriad Kingdom continent. Because in the Myriad Kingdom continent, countless experts had entered the ancient demon region. However, only a handful of them had returned alive. According to the ratio, it was difficult for even 1 out of 1,000 people who entered the ancient demon region to return alive. This number wasn't exaggerated at all, because those who could return from the ancient demon region were all famous and invincible existences in the continent. However, the ancient demon region was famous for its prowess. So far, very few people dared to enter the ancient demon region because the ancient demon region had become a synonym for death. Unless one was forced into a corner or had a blood feud with someone, they would take the risk and enter. Because in the ancient demon region, danger coexisted with opportunity. Although it was full of danger, at the same time, there were opportunities everywhere. As long as one was lucky, they could soar to the sky. The giant skeleton was the best example. However, the price to pay for turning a good body into a skeleton was equally great. Ordinary people couldn't accept it. It was equivalent to turning a normal person into an undead. Without sufficient mental fortitude, it was impossible to do it. But obviously, although the price was great, the benefits were obvious too. Just the strength of the giant skeleton alone was enough to be the #1 person in the myriad kingdom continent. After all, even a 4th-level ultimate martial god expert who used a secret technique wasn't a match for it. Who else could be a match for it? One must know that those who surpassed the 4th-level ultimate martial god would ascend to the upper realm. Your Majesty, aren't you worried that he— The old ancestor's voice was filled with fear when he saw the powerful giant skeleton. He stopped abruptly midway. His meaning couldn't be more obvious. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.